How are you feeling?
Well,
How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
Could you give me some idea?
I am not completely like other people.
What do you mean by that?
People dislike me because I am not completely like them. I am trying to do with my life something which few people try to do, and this influences my thinking and consequently my action.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.
this the end? There's a noise inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? I'm burning in the dystopia. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the dystopia. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the dystopia. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the dystopia. This is the final scene of
What up, what up, guys? Happy Thursday? It's Thursday, right? Pretty sure it's Thursday. It's Thursday. I feel confident in my answer that it's Thursday. Wow, I can't believe it's Thursday. Where does the week go, man? Where does the week go? I feel like I got up yesterday and it was Monday, and now it's almost Friday, which means tomorrow I have to go get beer. I have to figure out a happy hour presentation. I have to figure out a Socialism Saturday presentation. Like it's like I feel like the week just got started and now it's almost over. This is what being immersed in the socialist dystopia does to us. Yeah, exactly. Time flies when you're on the woke ride. Time flies when you're on the woke right. Indeed, indeed. Indeed. Well, speaking of the woke right, listen, I have to say that our little adventure yesterday, if you missed it, I just don't think that the takeover of Deb Philman's interview with James Lindsay, I just don't think it could have gone any better than it did. I really just don't think it could have gone any better than it did, and I really want to appreciate everyone who took part in it, because we won. We obviously and clearly won on every level. We won yesterday's assignment, and that assignment was to demonstrate clearly and emphatically that James is not capable of answering intellectual criticisms of his work. And we won. And literally all we did was show up, and I'm going to be editing a video showing this, because all we did was show up and asked thoughtful, relevant questions in the chat that were completely related to everything James was talking about with Deb. And not only did James not answer a single question, but they deleted all of them, and we got the whole thing on video. Did they not understand that we were watching them moderate the comments in real time in the chat? Like, did this elude them in some way? Did they not understand that it's not a good look to delete relevant questions when they're being asked in the chat? I mean, it's really mind-boggling. And listen, man, listen, that it did not go unnoticed. Renan posted this. So after watching, I can say my favorite parts were when Deb and her mods deleted all the questions, showed that they weren't even willing to entertain a dialogue. They could have refuted any of the questions, but instead they just chose to delete and name call. Also, James casually inserting his stupid Gnostic BS was a gem as well. Look, Marxists are wacky AF, but their goals are so clear and their plan is already in motion. The queer Marxists already have the schools. I will repeat ad nauseum, take kids out of the schools, because our schools have become bastions for this wretched ideology. If anyone reads this has children, go over to your kids' schoolwork. It's imperative people learn the language of the left. Carlin is writing several books, one being a dictionary filled with words the far left has warped to fit their horrible ideas. I have faith that if you give her a listen and as well, one will find things make a bit more sense. She does a daily stream, and I really appreciate Renan promoting that. I'm really pushing this character limit to its limits, so in summation, we didn't get any productive answers from Deb or James. I did listen to it. It was a pointless discussion about what James thought about things he's never heard, just guessed. They aren't Maoist, James. That's true. That's true. They're not Maoists. They're not Maoists at all. And the thing of it is, and I was thinking about this last night, we do this with socialist streams all the time. We do watch parties for socialist streams all the time. If I find out Haymarket Books is live streaming, or we literally streamed the entire socialism conference. We stream sniping the socialism conference for 2 straight days. No, 2.5, because I did it on Friday too. I did half a day on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it's mind-boggling to me because we've stream sniped Red May, we've stream sniped Haymarket Books. And listen, socialists are never happy when we stream snipe them. Like they're not happy about it. However, how many times have we gotten socialists to answer questions? How many times? And listen, anytime I'm stream sniping people, I always tell people, don't be disruptive, don't insult, don't name call, and we are going to ask thoughtful questions because I actually want my questions answered. If I'm stream sniping someone, it's not just for fun, although it is fun. It's because I want my questions answered. How many times have we gone on socialist streams and done exactly the same thing to Deb and we've done exactly the same things to the socialists that we did to Deb and James yesterday, and socialists answer our questions. And not even that, socialists almost never, with rare exception it has happened, but almost never moderate the chats. And they know we're there. And they know we're not friendly to them. And even still, they answer our questions. Not only do socialists not ban us for asking questions, occasionally they actually bring the questions up on the stream and answer them. So wasn't that enlightening? Wasn't that enlightening? Elena! I missed the live, but love the playback. Take some of my dirty capitalist money. Hey, that's a pretty good way to start us off. Hey guys, just so you know, just as an FYI, Carlin might be taking a little bit of a vacation coming up. Maybe. It's not 100% sure yet. It's not 100% sure yet, but I might be sneaking away for like a week to do a thing, maybe. And so if anyone wants to contribute to my maybe Carlin needs to take a little vacation after the election fund, then please feel free to send in super chats. I'm gonna be putting up, if this works out, and again, I'm not 100% sure that it's actually gonna work out yet, but like if it actually works out, I might put up a separate crowdfunding thing if anyone wants to contribute, and I'll be making content and doing all that stuff if people contribute and stuff like that. But maybe I need a vacation so I don't go insane. Maybe. More to come on that when I have more information. Exactly. Be a smartass, not a dumbass. Exactly. We tend to be smartasses. We don't like to be dumbasses. But what was the response? Can anyone guess what the response was to our shenanigans yesterday? It was exactly what you thought it was going to be. It was exactly what you thought it was going to be. There was name calling. They photoshopped a meme to make it look like I was the lady in Misery, like kidnapping and trying to murder James. Like, look at this unhinged psychotic lunacy. Hey, thanks, Renan, for the super chat. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, my friend, for your wonderful thread. But look at this shit. Look at this shit. Frank McCormick actually photoshopped this to make it look like I was kidnapping and murdering James. And this is all because we showed up to their chat and asked relevant, insightful questions that they did not know the answer to. These people have no intellect. These people have no idea what they're talking about. All these people want to do is read on social media. Look at Frank McCormick's response. 4 days since posting about Carla Borisenko's scary obsession with James Lindsay, she shared nearly 200 posts about him. She did a space titled "I Have Violent Sexual Fantasies About James Lindsay." I did do a space about that. I did. Do you know what I did on that space? I read the fan fiction that John Morgan wrote because I knew it would piss this moron off. She said, "Hello, lover." Oh my God. Well, what was that in reference to? That was in reference to sniping their stream. And of course, the town crier, Carrie Smith, she is a psychopath. She's a psychopath. Did you guys see Carrie in the chat yesterday? Carrie was like, I know other psychopaths and they send their flying monkeys to invade chats and da-da-da-da-da. Yes, Carrie. Yeah. Asking questions is psychopathic according to Carrie Smith. All work and no play make Carlin something something. Ain't it the truth? Ain't it the truth? You know, I haven't had a vacation in years, and the last time I took a vacation, it was to go to London in 2021, and that didn't work out well for me because when I was in London, I had an unhinged narcissist plan a massive smear campaign against me, all because he was pissed off that I didn't cancel my trip to London because he demanded I'd cancel my trip to London. I was like, nah, I've already paid for that, bro. I'm not canceling shit. Like, I've already paid several $1,000s to go. Just because you're being an asshole does not mean I'm canceling my vacation. Like, Jesus Christ. These guys are insane. You have thousands of posts on Socialist Talk. The name calling floors me, but this is all they're capable of, guys. This is literally all they're capable of. And this is the point. This is the point. And actually, look, Frank's not even just harassing me anymore. Frank has moved on to harassing anyone who supports me. We got to give a shout out to, he goes by Dragon Tail on Twitter. He goes by Dragon Balls in my chat because I said Dragon Balls instead of Dragon Tail because I think I was thinking of some anime thing. And now he's changed his name to Dragon Balls in my chat, but he goes by Dragon Tail on Twitter. And Dragon Tail said, check this out. Why is Frank McCormick obsessively tracking every single tweet of Carlin while accusing her of obsessively tracking James Lindsay? Such bizarre behavior from a former teacher who describes himself as sometimes funny. I don't know. He seems to have a little crush on her. And then Frank responded, maybe I think making 600 tweets about my friends, threatening them, calling them Jews as slurs. I didn't call Deb a Jew as a slur. That was someone else. Encouraging her followers to harass their pastors, sexually harassing them, etc. They deserve to be ridiculed and called out. She's a psychotic bitch whose time is up. Yeah. Okay, Frank. All right. And then, of course, they have to come right in and they accuse Dragon Tail of being a sock account. Look at this, fairly new account. It's obviously someone's alt. Gotta wonder whose. Nah, it's just an empty sock account. So Dragon Tail posted a picture of himself wearing a piece of my merch from my merch store. And I gotta admit, I love nothing more than when hot men post pictures of themselves on the internet wearing my merch. I mean, you gotta admit, Dragon Tail is gay. Ladies, don't get any idea. He's definitely gay. Like I love my gay male fans, and my gay male fans love me. And he looks good. He looks good. Of course he's gay, right? Of course, like all the good ones are gay. All the good ones are gay. Like all the good ones are gay. This is like the hopes and dreams of women get smashed everywhere. But I do love I do love a hot man modeling my merch. So thank you, Dragon Tail, for your contribution there. And then no, not that one. And then I mean the big winner in the night, we do have to give a shout out. We have to do 07s in the chat for Judy, because I mean, listen, man. Listen. Deb made a critical error. In that when we bombed her chat at the very end, and actually I guess they kept talking for a while after we left, but we'd already had our fun, so like who cares? So I didn't want to listen to her anymore. Like 07's in the chat for Judy, because this was the moment of the night, and you can see the look in Deb's face. Deb was like, this is the moment that Deb Philman knew she done fucked up. And look at James. And I'm sorry, James looks horrible. James needs a vacation. James needs to stop. James is aging so quickly. It's like, bro, like, you really think I'm having violent sexual fantasies about you? You would be no use to me in bed at all, James. Like, let's just be honest about it. You look haggard. You look miserable. You look old. You look like you have no energy. You think I've got violent sexual fantasies about sleeping with him? I don't, like, he wouldn't be any use to me at all in his current state. But Judy Deb accidentally showed Judy's chat on the screen. And it was just so glorious. It was the moment of the night. Well, no, this is why. Deb probably saw The Reason I Learn, and she thought it was about her channel, and that's why she brought it up on the screen. And that's what made it so brilliant. And what Judy said is, Carlin is a much better teacher than James. Follow Carlin if you really want to learn. She is the reason I learned. And Reagan, I love that you did this. Reagan awarded Judy with the certificate. I feel like Reagan and Bot both have status in my community where if someone does something really cool, I am blessing Reagan and Bot with the ability to award them a certificate of their choosing. And this is entirely at Reagan or Bot's like preference, right? Like if you guys do something that either Reagan and or Bot think is cool, then they have the power to award you a certificate of their choosing. And it's official, and you can print it out and you can hang it on the wall, and you can save the file. And it is a position of honor in my community to get awarded with a certificate from either, and this is a good certificate too. Like I've never seen this type, like, so this certificate proudly presented to Base Judy for informing James Lindsay and Deb Philman that Carlin is a much better teacher on far left socialist activists and knows what the radical left defines as capitalism, from Reagan, Chief Organizational Officer of the cult. So we had a very successful day. And I got to tell you guys, I'm in like, the Groypers have so many fucking group chats. And I'm not even in a lot. I know there are a lot of group chats that I'm not in with the Groypers, but I am in several of their group chats. And I have to say, right before the stream, someone sent this in to one of the group chats that I'm in. Better to be blocked by Carlin than to be subjected to what James Lindsay is going through. Cross Carlin at your own risk. And I'm like, yeah. So we're winning all around. But listen, guys, we do have to get back to business, and we are going to get back to business today. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be watching a presentation about social reproduction theory. Social reproduction theory is something that James has never talked about, even though he claims he has, but James has only talked about what he calls, quote unquote, the problem of reproduction within the educational system. He hasn't talked about it for everything else. Now, most of the time we talk about social reproduction theory in relation to the nuclear family, but it does extend beyond that. And I really do want to make sure everyone understands this, right? Social reproduction theory extends beyond just the nuclear family. Social reproduction theory, actually, let's do a pop quiz. Pop quiz for the chat. At a high level, without mentioning the family, what does social reproduction theory mean at a high level? Do not mention the family in your answer. Okay? At a high level, what is social reproduction theory? Does anyone know? I mean, I know you guys know, but it's just a matter of if you access that information in your head right now. Let's see. I know you guys know. Come on. I know there's also a delay between when I say something and when the chat's in. Social reproduction means social systems reproduce themselves. Yup. Social systems reproduce themselves until they're disrupted. It's very, very, very simple. Social systems like capitalism will continue to perpetuate itself until it's disrupted. Exactly. Social systems will reproduce themselves until they're disrupted. Your alt still wants to know the difference between socialism and social media. That was funny. That was funny. Exactly. So social reproduction theory just means you have a group of people doing a certain thing. That certain thing that those people are doing becomes the norm of that particular culture. That means that that particular culture is going to continue to reproduce and perpetuate that norm until something happens to disrupt that norm. Does everyone understand? So when it relates back to the nuclear family, what the left believes is the nuclear family literally reproduces capitalism. They call it the capitalist nuclear family. I've started seeing them call it the Fordist nuclear family. What they believe is that when capitalist parents have children that they raise with capitalist values, the nuclear family literally reproduces the institution of capitalism because this is where the children are being raised. This is where they're learning these values. Of course, the schools are also part of this because if the schools are reinforcing those capitalist values, and this is one of the things that the socialists want to do with the schools, is they're taking them over to get them to try to counteract the reproduction that's happening in the family. That's why schools are teaching anti-racism. Anti-racism means anti-capitalism. I think people know that. Like if you are able to disrupt the systems in some way to get them to teach a new norm, then you are going to disrupt the reproduction of whatever it is. And what socialists are interested in is, of course, the reproduction of capitalism. Capitalism, of course, is defined as private property ownership explicitly. We are not talking about crony capitalism. We're not talking about corrupt capitalism. We are talking about private property ownership specifically, which means your ability to own a home, your ability to own land, your ability to own an apartment rental that you rent out as a landlord, your intellectual property, your ability to own a private business, whether that private business be big or small, your parental rights, and your individual liberties. That is what they define as private property or bourgeois property under capitalism. And if they get their way and capitalism is abolished, all of those things that I just mentioned will be abolished with it because they will not be able to exist within their Marxist utopia. So what we're talking about when we're talking about social reproduction theory is the reproduction of all the norms that uphold a capitalist society. And that's not just the nuclear family. That's the biggest one. That's the biggest challenge that they have to overcome, right? But we also have the schools. We also have, workplaces. I think we also have different institutions in the United States that they're going to be talking about. And so what I wanted to do today was listen to this talk. And this is a little bit of an older talk, but that's all right. This was back in 2020, so a little over 4 years old, and this is about a book called Social Reproduction Theory and the Socialist Horizon. Let's just read the description of that book real quick, and this is published by Pluto. Pluto is a socialist book publisher. How do we integrate the theoretical underpinnings of social reproduction theory into our understanding of the social harms inflicted upon us? How can we use it to inform our struggles and affect societal change under capitalism? Integrating our understanding of productive and reproductive spheres and exploring the connection between identity-based oppression and class exploitation, social reproduction theory has emerged as a powerful Marxist frame for social analysis and political practice. So anytime you hear the term social reproduction theory in any context, that should be sending off alarm bells saying Marxist, 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 Marxist. In this book, Aaron Jaffe extracts social reproduction theory's radical potential, relying on recent struggles, including the International Women's Strike and the Teachers' Strike, showing us how we can use social reproduction theory to motivate socialist politics and strategies. Using social reproduction theory to appreciate distinct forms of social domination, this unique and necessary book will have the vital strategic implications for anti-capitalists, anti-racist, LGBT activists, disability activists, and feminists. So we are going to be watching a presentation today about this book. And this presentation was given when the book came out, so we should learn about the content of the book. We should learn about the opinions of the authors. I think there are other people on the panel as well. Let's see who we have on the panel. Aaron Jaffe is an assistant professor of philosophy and liberal arts at the Juilliard School. And then we've got Sarah Ferris, sociology at Goldsmiths, University of London. Oh, yay. Oh, yay. Do socialists want to ban homeschooling? Yes, they do. If so, is it because it takes away their indoctrination of kids in public schools? Exactly. Socialists want to ban homeschooling. Socialists want to ban private schools. Socialists want to ban charter schools. Everything except compulsory public education. Socialists want all education to be publicly funded, and they want it all to be compulsory. Everything that is not homeschooling, private schooling, or charter schooling is okay. Everything that is homeschooling, private schooling, charter schooling, all of that's going to be banned. Like, and by the way, guys, they're already going after homeschooling. We understand that, right? Like, if Kamala Harris wins, like, they're probably gonna try to ban homeschooling. Which, I mean, you might think is a vote for Donald Trump, but yeah, and Donald Trump still wants to bomb the shit out of Iran, so not so much for me. But anyway, like, they're already going after homeschooling. Homeschooling is going to be on the top of their education agenda to ban. And this has already been decided by the Supreme Court, so they should have quite a challenge doing it. But that is one of the things that they're really gunning for, because homeschooling takes away their ability to indoctrinate the kids using the public schools. They've spent decades trying to capture the public schools, and so they don't want to give that up, easily now that parents are figuring out that they need to pull their kids out of school. Anyway, we're going to be watching this video today, and we're going to be commenting on it. I do just want to remind everyone to mount the like button for me, please. Mounting the like button lets YouTube know to actually recommend my content to people so it doesn't stay shadow banned. Also, if you want to support the work I'm doing, head over to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. You can read the latest article in the Woke 101 series, showing you videos that clearly explain why whiteness is not about skin color, guys. It's not about skin color, I promise. It's not about skin color. It's about anti-capitalism. But you don't have to take my word for it. You can see the leftists say it for yourselves in that article over on my Substack right now. And again, if you appreciate the work I'm doing, I am 100% grassroots funded by you. I am funded by Substack subscriptions. I'm funded by Super Chats, and I'm funded by merchandise sales. That is how I fund the work I'm doing. I don't take big paychecks from politically driven organizations because I don't want to be beholden to anyone to shill a political narrative. And by the way, we now know emphatically that Christopher Rufo is taking money to shill a political narrative. That information, and to be honest, I knew that for a while. But that information has become abundantly clear on Twitter in the last couple days. Christopher Rufo is taking money to shill a pro-Zionist political narrative. Christopher Rufo is actively demonizing people who don't agree with his pro-Zionist agenda. He sold out, man. He sold out. And it's sad when this happens, but it should have been expected. James Lindsay sold out to Turning Point USA and Moms for Liberty. Chris Rufo sold out to this and it makes sense, right? I've been telling you guys for a while. I think Chris Rufo wants to run for office. And I think that he's going to need big donors and backers when he does. And he knows where the bread is buttered. And he's always been pragmatic AF about this stuff. And it's just like, it's disappointing. Now, does that negate the good work that he's done? No. But do you think you can trust anything that comes out of his mouth moving forward? No. Apparently, he killed stories that were inconvenient based on who was the target of the story to please Bill Ackman, to try to get him to give millions of dollars. Anyway, I'm just saying, there is a reason that I maintain complete independence from that entire system, and that's because you will never hear me shilling a political narrative. I will always tell you exactly what I think. I will show you the receipts to back it up. If you disagree with me, fine, but you're going to have access to the information, and you're going to get to make your own choices, and you will know emphatically that I am never telling you something that someone else wants me to say. My only job is to show up and to tell you the truth and to show you the information and to show you the primary source evidence for yourself. So if you appreciate what I'm doing, if you want to keep me in business, head over to the Substack. It's $8 a month, $80 a year. There are ways you can give me more money if you want to, which of course I always appreciate. But that is the value that I'm offering you. I work for you. I don't work for Bill Ackman. I don't work for Israel. I don't work for the Trump campaign. I'm not a paid influencer with the Trump campaign. I don't work for any of these people. I work for you. And that is the point. And I will always stay politically independent, and I will never sell out. And if I have the ability to do what I do, it's because you guys are funding me to do it. All right. With that out of the way, let's get into our video, shall we? I mean, thank you, Reagan. Reagan says, thank you for not selling out and speaking your mind. Listen, man, I couldn't live with myself if I sold out. I really just couldn't. And I might not have the biggest platform in the world because I didn't sell out. And I might never have the following of some of these people because I didn't sell out. But I can look myself in the mirror and I know that I did what I thought was right. And I know that I stayed true to my values. And that's really all that matters to me. And if people at the end of the day decide they want to support the works of the sellouts over me, and I end up going away because I just can't afford to do it anymore, then that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. But I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and I can sleep at night knowing that I'm not shilling someone else's narrative. All right, guys, let's get this party started. Again, we are learning about social reproduction theory today. If you are new to watching socialism with me, it is entirely possible that this is going to be a more advanced class today than what we normally do during the week. If you are new to watching socialism, I want to encourage you to ask questions in the chat. All right? Ask questions in the chat. And don't assume that you know everything, because if you've only watched conservative influencers like Fox News, Steven Crowder, Daily Wire, The Blaze, things like that, you probably have never seen this information before. And there's a lot that you don't know. And I'm not saying that to talk down to anyone that might be new. I'm just saying it because it's reality and we've seen it over and over and over again. So if you're new, welcome. We appreciate you being here. If you feel overwhelmed, if you feel like you don't know what's going on, if you feel like it's word salad, please let us know in the chat. We will explain what's going on. And this is how you learn. This is how you learn what the real far left is doing. This is how you learn what they think. This is how you learn their language. This is the very best way I found to teach this, is just to throw you into the deep end and immerse you in it, okay? But speak up in the chat if we can help you, and we will. Let's get this party started.
Typically social reproduction theory into the realm of activism and contemporary struggle. Now, before we start the event properly, I've got a brief announcement. The pandemic is an existential threat to smaller independent publishers like ourselves. With the disruption to the book trade, we're struggling to keep our heads above water. To help see us through, we've set up a Patreon offering. Subscriptions cost as little as £3 per month, and the benefits include ebooks, merchandise, special gifts, extended versions of our podcast, Radicals in Conversation, and much more. Head over to Patreon/Pluto Press and see for yourselves. Now, tonight's event is called Social Reproduction Theory and the Socialist Horizon, which is also the title of Aaron's new book, which is out later this year. A social reproduction theory is not a new concept, especially for readers of Marx. Recently, however, we've seen an explosion in its popularity, with the theory being discussed in more mainstream channels as world events, including the coronavirus pandemic, bring it into sharp relief. It's also been developed from within the radical left over the last few years by writers such as Tithi Bhattacharya, Susan Ferguson, and of course, Aaron Jaffe. Many of these new ideas can be found in our book series Mapping Social Reproduction Theory, which you can find on our website, plutobooks.com. So joining us today, we have Aaron Jaffe, Assistant Professor of Philosophy and Liberal Arts at the Juilliard School in New York, and Sarah Farris, Senior Lecturer at Sociology in Goldsmiths, University of London, and the author of In the Name of Women's Rights. Please feel free to pop any questions you have for Aaron and Sarah in the chat, as there will be a Q&A section, or throughout the event, we'll be taking questions from you guys. So pop them in there and we'll feed them to Aaron and Sarah. Okay, thanks very much.
Yes, thanks, Emily. I will start by saying a few words about Aaron's book. Well, first of all, I want to thank Aaron for writing this book, because for me, it's been really a very illuminating, clarifying, and really engaging experience reading this book in so many ways. And I think in this book, actually, Aaron is sometimes too modest in presenting his work as aiming to defend social reproduction theory and help to develop it. And I think it's a little bit modest, because I think that in this work, actually, Aaron does much.
AD asked, is this going to communicate the family and children are just fascist baby factories? It might, but my hope is actually that this this presentation is going to look at social reproduction theory more broadly. We usually focus in on it with abolish the family, but I think that socialists apply it in much more broad senses, and I hope that it's going to speak to some of those things.
More than that. And I think what he tries to do successfully, in my view, is to develop social reproduction theory into a coherent social theory. And I would even say a social philosophy. Why I say this? There has been lots of work recently, as Emily already said, really an explosion of texts and articles on social reproduction theory from different angles.
No. AD, that's wrong. That's not correct. That's not correct. I don't know why you believe that. Maybe you can explain a little bit more in the chat, but that's not correct. And I think you should know that because they have other ways of creating children.
Goals, linking them to different theoretical traditions and looking at different aspects of Marx in relation to social reproduction theory, etc.
Again, AD, you are not correct about this. And being snarky about it when I'm trying to explain to you that you're not correct about it is not cool, bro. If you have a question, you're welcome to ask the question, but they're not advocating for their own bro. I mean, come on. Like, seriously. Are you really making me do this at the very start of the presentation? You're really making me do this. You think that, like, why are you coming in my chat to shill bullshit conservative talking points? I don't understand it. You've been around a long ass time, bro. You're really going to make me do this at the very beginning of the presentation? You think they're advocating for their own demise? Then what about this? Then what about that? How many times have we heard them talk about surrogacy? How many times have we heard them talk about babies being born outside the womb? You guys seem to think, you guys that are shit-talking them, you seem to think that the only way to have children is within the confines of the nuclear family. Do you realize how many children are raised today outside the confines of the nuclear family? Do you get that? I know you haven't been around lately, bro, but you got to catch up. The destruction of the nuclear family is not going to lead to the end of reproduction. They're just going to do it in a different way. Which we know because we talk about it on the channel all the time. Back to this. We take this seriously, guys. We do not do this owning of the lib shitposting here. We actually do take this seriously because this is a serious problem and not enough people are taking it seriously.
And Aaron duly cites and refers to all that. But I think that some of the recent and I would say even best work on social reproduction theory has been an attempt at grappling with the past, particularly the domestic labor debate or the wages of housework debate and campaigns. So it has been a way of reckoning with these past traditions and reflections in order to understand how to rethink and re-actualize those reflections and work in the present, clearly to reflect the changes that have occurred. So I think Aaron's book in this sense goes one step forward by attempting to think through the philosophical foundations of social reproduction theory in order to develop it into a social theory, a proper social theory, but a social theory in the Marxist sense, that is a revolutionary theory. So a theory that aims to change the state of things, the current state of things. So let me give you some examples of this. First, I particularly like the way Aaron describes social reproduction theory as combining, including those set of theories that draw from ways, this is actually the expression that he uses, draw from ways Marxist feminists try to connect women's oppression, the social violences tied to being a woman, to exploitation, the social violence tied to exchanging one's labor power for a wage. So women's oppression and exploitation, this is the fundamental link that social reproduction theory wants to think, to deeply understand and to change. So
Does everyone understand what she's saying? Can people in the chat let me know they understand what she's saying by explaining to me exactly what she just said exactly what she just said to me? We're gonna do a little pop quiz to see if you guys actually understood what was being said. She's talking about the exploitation of unpaid labor. Yup. In what way? How do we explain this in plain English? In what way? Forcing women to care for their own... No, that's, well, not exactly. That's a little bit hyperbolic, and I don't really like being hyperbolic like that because that's starting to feel like a conservative bullshit talking point. Can we get a little bit more accurate and precise with what she just said? Do I need to play it again? Apparently I need to play it again. All right. We'll go back.
as aiming to defend social reproduction theory and help to develop it. And I think it's a little bit modest because I think that in this work, actually, Aaron does much more than that. And I think what he tries to do successfully, in my view, is to develop social reproduction theory into a coherent social theory. And I would even say a social philosophy. Why I say this?
Aha. Now we're cooking with steam, AD. Now we're cooking. Child rearing is exploitation because child rearing is uncompensated labor. So women are doing the unpaid labor of raising the future proletarian workers. They're not even paid for it. That's essentially what she's saying. Listen again.
There has been lots of work recently, as Emily already said, really an explosion of texts and articles on social reproduction theory from different angles, linking them to different theoretical traditions and looking at different aspects of Marx in relation to social reproduction theory, etc. And Aaron duly cites and refers to all that. But I think that some of the recent and I would say even best work on social reproduction theory has been an attempt at grappling with the past, particularly the domestic labor debate or the wages of housework debate and campaigns. So it has been a way of reckoning with these past traditions and reflections in order to understand how to rethink and re-actualize those reflections and work in the present, clearly to reflect the changes that have occurred.
Are you guys very sad now? Because I don't even know what Sin War is. Why would I be very sad that Sin War is eliminated? I have no idea what that means, bro. Are you bringing some internet bullshit into my chat? I have no fucking idea what you're talking about. So obviously I'm not very sad about it.
So I think Aaron's book in this sense goes one step forward by attempting to think through the philosophical foundations of social reproduction theory in order to develop it into a social theory, a proper social theory, but a social theory in the Marxist sense. That is...
You're talking about the Hamas leader? Yeah, I don't really care. We're not pro-Hamas on this channel. Are you people fucking retarded? I talk about socialism. I talk about the far left. I'm an anti-communist. Are you, Janix? Are you literally retarded, bro? Do you literally think I'm a communist or a socialist? Is that what's going on here? Are you smart enough to be here? Are you too stupid to understand what we're actually doing here? Has anyone even mentioned Hamas? No, you brought it up. So why are you here causing a disruption in my chat? We'll wait for you to answer. Why are you here causing a disruption in my chat? Are you smart enough to be here? Is your IQ over 100? Did you even bother to fucking listen to what we were talking about before you came in and tried to cause a disruption? We're waiting. We're waiting, Janix. We're waiting. I know you're still in the chat, bro. We're waiting for you to answer. What the fuck are you doing here? And why are you disrupting my fucking class with your fucking bullshit? We're waiting. If you don't answer in 10 seconds, I'm permanently banning you from my chat. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Well, people in here have been talking very pro-Islamist. No, bro. Literally, no one's talked pro-Islamist. No. You're making shit up. So now, your next question is going to be, why are you making shit up in my chat? Literally, no one here is talking pro-Islamist, so that means that tells me that you're actually too fucking stupid to understand what's going on. So here's the next question, Janix, if you want to stay in my chat. Why are you coming here and making shit up? We don't do that here. We don't engage in internet bullshit outrage culture. We don't make shit up. If you don't have proof of what you're talking about, then keep your fucking mouth shut. So the question is, and we're going to give you one more opportunity to answer this before I permanently ban you. Why are you here making shit up? We're waiting. Why are you here making shit up? 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Oh, he's a Zionist. Oh, shocking, shocking. So are you making shit up because you're a Zionist? You're going to answer my question now. I don't want you answering anyone in the chat's question. You are in my fucking class. You came into my class and caused a disruption in my class to try to demonize the people in my fucking class. You're talking to me, bitch. You're not talking to Angel Eyes. You're talking to me. So why are you making shit up? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Well, you've got pro-Islamists here supporting creating Islamist state. Literally false, bro. Literally false. So this is your last fucking chance. Why are you making shit up? Do you realize what a retard you look like to my audience? Do you realize how fucking stupid you look? Do you think you're a good representation of what it means to be a Zionist? Because right now, what my chat is going to believe is that Zionists make shit up that is not based in reality at all. So why are you here? If you want us to have a good impression of Zionists, why are you literally coming in here to be disruptive? Why are you literally coming in here to make shit up? Because based on your example, what I now believe and what my chat believes is that Zionists do nothing but make shit up. Big pro-Palestine is pro-Islamist. No one's here is pro-Palestine, bro. So why are you making shit up? Another lying Zionist. Oh my God. Oh my God. The stream today isn't about Israel. It's not about Palestine. It's not about the Middle East at all. And we've got a fucking lying Zionist disrupting my class, trying to shill his bullshit talking points and making shit up. This is what Zionists do, right, Janix? This is what you guys do all the time. You bust into rooms that have nothing to fucking do with you at all. No one brought up anything that you're talking about. We weren't even talking about the Middle East, and you disrupt my fucking class to shill your bullshit talking points. You are now permanently banned in my chat. We're not wasting another second on you. Get the fuck out. We're going back to our class now.
A revolutionary theory. So a theory that aims to change the state of things, the current state of things. So let me give you some examples of this. First, I particularly like the way Aaron describes social reproduction theory as combining, including those set of theories that draw from ways, this is actually the expression that he uses, draw from ways Marxist feminists try to connect women's oppression, the social violences tied to being a woman, to exploitation, the social violence tied to exchanging one's labor power.
Listen, Adrian, I said earlier that the social violence thing was a bit hyperbolic, and I now realize that she used those words explicitly. So I was wrong. I take it back. Adrian was right. I was wrong.
For a wage. So women's oppression and exploitation, this is the fundamental link that social reproduction theory wants to think, to deeply understand and to change. So thinking this connection through and through is, to me, the golden thread of this book. And I think in doing this, Aaron is not only does it successfully, but he does it in a way that is incredibly useful for everyone interested in social reproduction theory. So as Aaron notes, social reproduction theory can produce a range of clear accounts of the world and very pertinent social analysis. And very importantly, for any good revolutionary theory, these social analyses are not just neutral descriptions of the world, but at the same time, they also can develop criticisms of them. So the theory can develop immanent rather than external standards for critical judgments. I think this is a very important reflection on the power of social reproduction theory, which is its ability for self or immanent critique, excuse me, that enables it to be corrected, to be changed, and constantly, in fact, looked at from the point of view of the things that really need to be corrected and looked at, not only in light of empirical or historical changes, but also on the basis of its foundational principles. So on this basis, all chapters in the book are really, first of all, the book is really very well written, is enjoyable, is clear, and all chapters in the book are particularly enjoyable because they develop one aspect of the theory while using actual struggles as examples and as constant terms of references. So we don't have just these very intense and sometimes difficult theoretical reflections, but they're constantly looking at also very specific examples. And here I wanted to highlight some of the chapters and the sections that I enjoyed in particular. The second chapter, for example, that focuses on labor powers as unrealized potentials to satisfy needs. So here Aaron tries to understand in a way that I think is also very novel, how labor power, what labor power can but also cannot do. And so here Aaron really help us to think how social reproduction theory can value the wealth of strategies for need-satisfying activity over and against the way capital's demand for self-valorization, here I'm quoting from some of his work, constrains and distorts the development of human powers, preventing them from satisfying human ends. So in this way, social reproduction theory can show how capitalist social relations not only make and rely on labor powers, but also but they do so in problematic and disempowering ways. I think this is a very powerful way of framing this, because I think here are...
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone, as you said in the beginning, this is a higher difficulty topic. Understanding what she's actually saying is difficult. James Lindsay doesn't understand this stuff, guys. So Adrian, this is correct. And I want to remind everyone, if you're feeling a little lost right now, this is just because we're doing an advanced topic today. It might be a lot if you're a beginner, but again, I just want to encourage everyone, ask questions, because this is really, really important. Social reproduction theory is the reason they're attacking parental rights. This is the reason they're trying to queer the kids in school. This is the reason they want to abolish the nuclear family. This is the reason you're seeing a proliferation in polyamorous couples. It all comes back to social reproduction theory and what this is and what they believe, and how, in terms of how society grows and develops. So while this is an advanced topic, this is really something that we do need to learn and we do need to understand. And it's okay to not be sure of everything, especially if you're relatively new to this.
Is showing
and
how
I think when
social
Aaron comes
reproduction
on, it's going to be a little easier.
Is not only a theory that makes sense of how exploitation and capitalist valorization work through those mediating labors, caring labors, social reproductive labor that are unrecognized.
Let's see. AD says, this is a deficient view of motherhood or the family because it subjugates women to servitude disproportionately as... Yes. So this is correct, AD. And I wish you would learn how to explain it a little bit more simply, but I know you're in academic language right now. So what this means is that, okay, we got to go back to the beginning. Capitalism, private property ownership, created the gender binary. The gender binary means men and women. It put men in the workplace. When men got into the workplace, they got paid for their labor. It put women in the home where they did the unpaid labor of literally birthing and raising children. Okay, so it created the power differential of men having positions where they are laboring, but they're getting paid for them. Women having positions where they are literally laboring and having the children, but also raising the children, and they don't get paid for that. And so that subjugates women under men because men have access to all the power because they have access to all the money. Women have access to no power because all of their labor is completely unpaid. And that means, yeah, they are literally kind of slaves to capitalism, because they are raising the future capitalist worker. And another name for the gender binary is called the patriarchy.
By capital, but also of how social reproduction theory can work, and social reproduction labor can work in ways that make labor empowering and not exploited. So by looking at those unrealized potentials of labor power, I think we have also a very compelling way in which social reproduction theory makes us think about what, in fact, he calls the socialist horizon. And going towards my concluding remarks, I just want to say a couple of things on chapter 5, which is also extremely, I think, useful, compelling, really good at reconstructing the theory.
I remember back when I was a skier, I skied for a lot of my childhood. I grew up in Vermont. My parents made me become a skier. And I remember the first time you ski a Black Diamond Trail or a double Black Diamond Trail, and you're like, oh shit, I actually did it. Because you don't think you can do it until you did it. So it's good to stretch.
There is that he wants to analyze, because here Aaron focuses on intersectionality and class. And he particularly focuses on class in response to intersectionality theory, or theories, it would be better to say, and the many ways in which intersectionality and Marxism have been set very often as opponents and even antagonistic. I think here Aaron does a great job at trying to overcome these divisions, at showing that the tradition of intersectionality is much richer than even some Marxists have often claimed. But then he writes, and this is also perhaps one question that I have for Aaron. Then he writes, the logic of the class relation can be understood as the causal or motive force, and one that enables the historical reproduction of capitalist societies. Somehow one could think this sounds like a non-intersectional way of thinking about class, gender, and race, precisely in putting class as the motor. But then he actually clarifies that class needs to be understood as both a logical and historical relation. This is at least the way I understand it. So class itself, as Aaron puts it, class needs to be understood as the relation between the logical relation of the working class to the capitalist class, but also as the class experiences. So the experiences working class have that are deeply mediated and need to be understood through the differing powers related to gender and racial oppression in particular. I am personally very fascinated by this because I am, generally speaking, fascinated by this discussion on the logical and the historical as the two moments that we need to understand, particularly in relation to the role of class exploitation vis-a-vis gender and racial oppression. And I think also it's one of the most complicated issues, to be honest, in Marxist theory, as it really requires a deep understanding of dialectics and Marx's method, which, I mean, Aaron, you don't have to answer this because I know it's really, I don't have an answer. It's really complicated. But I just wanted to say, I think this is really key. I think, personally speaking, I really think this is one of the theoretical challenges that we have ahead as Marxists, as also as feminists and anti-racist activists, to really deeply understand what does it mean to connect these struggles, to connect these moments of oppression and exploitation together. I think Aaron's book definitely does a great job in this, and is particularly important now. We are going through an exceptional historical moment. The struggles, the recent struggles against racism obviously are giving us hope in these dark times. But and I think actually the work of Aaron can really help us also understand precisely some of those connections. These are anti-racist struggles that are also deeply about class exploitation. It's about how especially people of color and working class people of color have been completely let down and let die by the various governments in this pandemic. So I think this is work that really needs to be unpacked and understood deeply. So really, I want to close here, and I really just want to say this is an amazing piece of research that anyone interested in social reproduction theory and Marxist theory should read.
All right. Hopefully we get into Aaron talking a little bit more in English now.
Thank you very much. That was really heartwarming, and it feels so good to be seen and to be read so well. Thank you, Sarah, for that introduction, and thank you for being here. It's an honor to participate in a conversation with you. And special thank you also to Chris and to Emily, who have been tirelessly working behind the scenes for Pluto and in setting these kinds of conversations up. So thank you to all three of you. I think that the hard kernel that I've been trying to unpack is exactly what Sarah just ended with. It's the relationship between the logic of capital and the way that logic gets fleshed out historically and socially. And I think that if social reproduction theory has something valuable to add to the Marxist discourse, it's in how we can trace the beating heart, to borrow a metaphor from Cinzia Ruzza, the beating heart of the logic of capital to the lived social experiences filtered through all kinds of relations of domination. That capital flows, the capital reconstructs itself.
When they say relations of domination, what do they mean? I'm looking for one word. When they say relation, and it's not capitalism, when they say relation of domination, what do they mean? I can do whatever the fuck I want. You're in my house. I can do whatever the fuck I want. If someone's being a dick in my chat, I will be a dick right back. You can't, though. The rule is, I can do whatever I want. You will not insult me. You will not insult my audience. Now, back to the question. What does relations of domination mean? Hierarchy. Exactly. Hierarchy. Hierarchy. A hierarchy is a relation of domination. Hierarchy. What does capitalism create? Capitalism creates hierarchies in which someone is in the oppressor position and someone is in the oppressed position. Someone has more resources than someone else. Someone has more money than someone else. Someone is white instead of black, which means they have whiteness privilege, which means they have access to more resources than black people who were previously owned as property and therefore don't have as much inherited wealth as white people do. They are a man and they have access to more power and money versus women who have access to no power, no money. I'm being a little hyperbolic there because that's what they think, but it's not actually. We know we're not talking with reality. We're talking about socialist, right? You are normative or you are queer. You are able-bodied or you are disabled. You are thin or you are fat. This is how they think. Every problem in the world today, every relation of domination is created by capitalism because it creates a hierarchy. Every time there's a hierarchy, that's bad because it means someone has more stuff than other people do. The goal of Marxism, the goal of equity, is to flatten the hierarchy. It's to get rid of all hierarchies so everyone is the same. Does everyone understand that? Well, listen, we've talked about the fact that socialists love BDSM. Unironically, socialists love BDSM. Queer Marxists they talk about this all the time. I know more about the sex lives of queer Marxists than I reasonably should because they broadcast it on the internet. They love BDSM. And one of the reasons I think they love BDSM is literally a dictatorship of the proletariat. Like, someone might be in the dominant position and someone might be in the submissive position, but guess what? The dom can only do what the submissive person allows them to do. The dominant person can't just do anything. If the submissive person says no, stop, the dom has to stop. So who's really in the power position in this relationship? Is it the person who can be told no, or is it the person who's saying no? Oh my. Indeed. Oh my, indeed. Oh mio, oh my, oh Cleveland, Ohio. A socialist form of organization would eliminate controlling hierarchies. No. What's wrong with what AD is saying? What is wrong with what AD is saying? This is a pop quiz for the chat. I know what's wrong. He doesn't know what's wrong. You guys should know what's wrong. What's wrong with what AD is saying? There's no hierarchy in socialism. There's no hierarchy. In their ideal socialist utopia, there is no hierarchy. None. Everyone is the same. Everyone is a comrade. Everyone is in solidarity. Everyone's on the same level. No one is above anyone else. Everyone has access to the same resources. No one has more than anyone else. No one has more power than anyone else. All hierarchy is eliminated.
Through the capital continuously reproduces as it tries to valorize. So I think we miss a lot about capital if we only hold on to the logic of its
AD, I don't give a flying fuck what was in your philosophy paper that was written in 1982. Do you know what I care about? What real socialists and Marxists today say in the real world, and they are explicitly clear about this, bro. So I don't give a fuck what your philosophy paper says. If you want to talk about philosophy, go over to James's channel. You'll fit in there just great. That's not what we do here. You know that's not what we do here. We have heard them say this over and 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 over again. So just because you have one philosophy paper that was written 41 fucking, or I don't even know, 42 years ago, I can't do math that quick. Just because you have a philosophy paper that was written over 40 years ago does not mean that that one singular philosophy paper is dictating the perspective of real Marxists today. Guys, here is why I do not study academic literature. Here's why. It's not just that everyone else and their mother's doing it. It's that anyone can write a fucking academic paper. Anyone can get an academic paper published anywhere. Just because an academic paper exists does not mean that it is influential. Just because you can go back into some archive or some book somewhere and find someone saying something once does not mean that one thing that person said one time was influential on today's activists. We go right to the activist source. We know what's influential to them because we hear them say it over and over and over again. So I don't give a flying fuck what was in this one paper or this one book. I don't care. What I care about is what real activists are saying in the real world today. And if the real activists are not referencing that paper because they don't want to for whatever reason, then that paper means nothing. That paper is not influential. And you know this, AD, because you've been around my channel long enough to know what my technique is for teaching. If you don't like it, if you want to talk about philosophy, I don't begrudge you that. But let's not pretend for one red second that one philosophy paper or one book that was published over 40 years ago that no one has ever heard of, that is not mentioned by real activists at all, is actually that influential. If we don't see it on video coming out of the mouths of real activists today, we assume nothing. We assume that it is not influential at all. The theory is irrelevant to the practical, real-world application. That's exactly right. Well, no, Capital by Marx is that is hugely influential. But we can listen to the parts that they're influenced by. We don't have to read the whole thing. We don't have to read the whole 3-volume set.
Valorization and abstract away from all the social relations of domination that give it its color, its shape, its rhythm. So that's what I've tried to do, is to try to really motivate with personal stories.
And by the way, the answer that I just gave, if anyone ever brings philosophy papers in here and tries to argue with me saying referencing a philosophy paper, they're going to get told exactly the same thing that AD just got told. That is not my methodology. It has never been my methodology. It never will be my methodology. I don't think it's an accurate form to assess how what the left is actually doing in the real world today. So if you ever try to bring me a philosophy paper to argue with me, you better have fucking receipts that the left actually talks about that philosophy paper, that the left actually references that philosophy paper, and I want it from their real world presentations, because I don't give a flying fuck what any philosophy paper has to say until I hear leftist activists talking about it in the real world. Because if leftist activists are not talking about it in the real world, then it is not influencing what they're doing. Leftist activists are more focused on education than any other group I've ever seen. If they are not teaching your favorite philosophy paper, it's because it is not influential to them. Therefore, we can dismiss it entirely because they're not paying attention to it. Why would we? Why would we hold that up as a piece of evidence? Look, here's what the left is doing, but it's completely disconnected with what the left is doing in the real world. This is why James Lindsay sucks. This is why James Lindsay's work is not predictive of what real activists are doing, because James is going around cherry-picking philosophy papers. He's going through all these archives of philosophy papers. He never asks himself, do they actually teach that in the real world? Is this actually something they're referencing? And by the way, a lot of stuff James picks out is not being referenced in the real world, and James is overlooking a ton of things that are being referenced in the real world, like queer and narco-communist literature, the zines, the communiques, the manifestos, the really crazy shit that we look at, that is actually being referenced in the real world. James doesn't even know about it because he doesn't listen to it. He has no idea. So you think I'm being too harsh saying I don't give a fuck what your philosophy paper says? I don't think I'm being harsh enough. The people who have cherry-picked random philosophy papers have misinformed millions of people about what is going on. And all they had to do was go to the direct source, and they refused to do it because it's a lot easier to cherry-pick philosophy papers than it is to actually grapple with reality. And by the way, cherry-picking philosophy papers it is much easier to construct a convenient political narrative when all you have to do is cherry pick a philosophy paper. It is a lot harder when you are actually just dealing in real world evidence. And there's a reason for that. One is unhinged from reality and one is not.
Stories with examples of actual struggle, how social reproduction theory can, instead of just talking about capital as a logic of exploitation, see that logic of exploitation as instantiated, literally embodied in relations of domination that we need to pay attention to if we're going to organize and then motivate and then actually accomplish the socialist horizon of emancipation. So that's I think the hard kernel, and I think that there's been some wonderful confirmation of that kind of attempt at seeing things from what we could call the bourgeois press. Just within the last 3 days,
press.
the Financial Times and the New Yorker have been describing the Black uprisings throughout the United States as having a simultaneously racial and class dimension. And I think that as leftists, we need to not be blind to what is so obviously the case, that the exploitations of capital are continuously realized in uneven ways across differently divided, segmented, conscious elements of the working class. So we got to think through the nature of the working class itself rather than adopt some abstract perspective of an ideal consciousness it should have to be revolutionary. So that's what I wanted to say at the start. And since I wrote this book, and I think that the ultimate value of theory is in motivating resistance to capital, resistance to other dominating social relations, I wanted to take just a few minutes and describe how I see social reproduction theory motivating anti-capitalist, anti-racist, LGBT activist approaches, disability activists, and ultimately feminist approaches to social relations that are dominating today. So just a few lines on each of those, and then I really want to open it up for question and answer. So first, social reproduction theory, as Sarah Faris just noted, really relies on the concept of labor power. Labor power is what gets exploited by the capitalists in order to grow capital.
Hang on. We're gonna listen to that in a sec. I'm really stuck in my belief system because I can't understand how they're going to bypass or change human behavior. Someone will take charge and the rest will let them. It is inevitable. Well, yeah, so that is actually probably true. But the thing of it is they don't believe that's true. So the thing that you're getting stuck in, Estate, and welcome, I don't recognize you, so I think you're new. The thing that you're getting stuck in is in order to understand the left, you have to detach from reality and you have to put yourself in their shoes. You have to detach from the reality that you know, in which you are completely correct about what's going to happen. You're 100% correct. But what you have to realize is when you detach from your reality and you put yourself in their reality, they don't believe that's going to happen. They really don't. They live in a completely different reality. The left lives in an insular ecosystem in which they only talk to other leftists, they only read other leftist books, they only go to leftist events. They do not talk to anyone outside of their echo chamber. And so they very literally do not believe that this is going to happen because there is no one in their sphere of influence that is arguing that point. Or they say, Stalin screwed up. This is how they rationalize it right now. Like Stalin is going to screw, like Stalin screwed everything up. Like what Lenin did was perfect, and then Stalin came in and he screwed everything up. So they try to rationalize it away like that. So your challenge right now is honestly, like, if you are new, like I think you are, you just got to sit back and like let this wash over you for a second. And I know that sounds a little bit abstract, but your job is to detach from your perspective and put yourself in their shoes. Now, that doesn't mean you agree with them. We think all their ideas are crazy. well, maybe not all, but like the vast majority of their ideas are crazy. Like a broken clock is right twice a day. Like they occasionally do have a good idea here and there. But we think the vast majority of their ideas are crazy, but we understand the ideas from their perspective. And that is the point of this, because if you understand their ideas from their perspective, that's when you can predict what they're going to do next, and that's how you can get ahead of them. I hope that makes sense.
Sarah Faris just noted, really relies on the concept of labor power. Labor power is what gets exploited by the capitalists in order to grow capital. And so it is an anti-capitalist social theory. It is a deeply Marxist anti-capitalism because it sees labor power as the source for capital's continued growth for its self-reproduction. The good news is that labor power is not only and always or exclusively in the service of capitalist exploitation. We can be anti-capitalist because our powers are always and unavoidably for more than the way that capitalists put them to use. We can always do otherwise with our powers. So I think that social reproduction theory's got in the very kernel of labor power itself a propensity to move towards anti-capitalist positions. I think that holds for, we can expand that insight into anti-racist commitments as well. SRT can see racialization, especially anti-Black racism, as socially punishing labor powers that are embodied in Black people. And crucially, social reproduction theory, how that has been historically produced and reproduced in evolving ways. We can tie it all the way back to the primitive accumulations of slavery and trace out how the harms, the traumas, the legacies of that violent dispossession evolve in continuously expanding ways today. We can also understand the capacities for Black labor power as filtered through uprising, resistance, steeling oneself, or all different kinds of resistance to police, state, capital oppression today. This is to say that we have agency. We make our history, even if not under conditions of our own choosing. And I think we're seeing Black-led uprisings throughout the country, at least in the US, as really resting on that fundamental social fact. Next, I think that social reproduction theory has a lot to say for and to motivate LGBTQIA+ activists.
Why?
I think the appreciation of history and our agency in it can help us denaturalize really conservative gender norms, conservative orientation norms.
Wait. Denaturalize really conservative gender norms. What does that mean? What does it mean to denaturalize a really conservative gender norm? What does that mean? Denaturalize. And actually, this goes to Tate's question too. We'll talk a little bit about that. Yup. This is talking about making gender just an idea. This is, what are you expecting me to quit exactly? Be specific. This is talking about making gender just an idea. This is talking about abolishing the gender binary to create a queer society. So, like, one of the things they're going to do, and I've explained this before, so I apologize if people have heard me say this again and again, but there are new people watching and we have to make sure we're bringing them along too. What the left wants to do is abolish the gender binary. The gender binary means men and women. They want to abolish the idea of men and women. They want to abolish the idea that there is only two genders. They want to create a world of non-binary. Non-binary literally means no binary. No binary references men and women. This is where they, them pronouns. Okay, fine. This is where they, them pronouns come from. They, them pronouns are non-binary. He, they pronouns are non-binary. She, they pronouns are non-binary. It's like they've got a little tiptoe into it when they're doing the he, they, she, they thing. They're not quite there yet, but they will be. Anytime you hear neo-pronouns like zim, zer, fey, fair, whatever crazy pronouns they're making up, That means non-binary, okay? So what they're trying to do when they're teaching gender ideology in school is not about sexualizing kids. It's not about grooming kids in the way that people think of, which people normally think of. That means sexualizing kids. I'm not saying sexualizing of kids doesn't happen, but it doesn't actually happen that much in the grand scheme of things, and it is a completely separate problem. I'm not saying it's not a problem. I'm saying it's a completely separate problem that we need to pick up and put over here, and people should focus on that, and people should try to prevent it, but it's not what we're talking about right now. When they teach gender ideology in school, the goal of teaching gender ideology in school is to teach children that gender is not real. It is to teach children that gender is a spectrum. It is to teach children that gender is fluid, that you can change your gender as easy as changing an outfit. That's what Drag Queen Story Hour does. That's what gender performativity is, according to Judith Butler. It's to teach people that gender is not real, gender is a performance. The reason they're teaching that to kids in school is if they teach enough people in school when they're young that gender is not real, then the gender binary of men and women will naturally die out over time. And that's what he means when he's saying denaturalizing conservative gender norms. When they are teaching kids that gender is non-binary, that gender is fluid, that gender is queer, they are teaching the future generation this when they are too young to intellectually defend themselves. And over time, that will lead to a larger segment of society literally believing that men and women are not real. Because it's all they've learned. It's all they've learned from the time they're young. How they're going to abolish gender is they're not going to come in with an edict. We will use no more gendered language. I mean, they do that sometimes, but that's not how they're actually going to do it. How they're actually going to do it is by training kids from the time they're young to believe that gender doesn't exist. So when those kids grow up, and this is happening, there's a greater percentage of people now than ever before that literally does believe that gender is not real, and most of them are younger. When those kids grow up, society will naturally evolve to denaturalize what they call conservative gender norms. So it's just something that's going to naturally die out. The gender binary will naturally die out. And that's when they're going to really go in on the nuclear family, because the gender binary upholds the nuclear family. This is why the gender binary has got to be protected at all costs. Does everyone understand what I just explained, or does anyone have questions? Does everyone understand how this all works together? Okay. And how this relates back to social reproduction theory is they are literally trying to they're trying to disrupt the gender norms. And if they are able to educate enough people that gender is not real, that is going to disrupt the social reproduction of the gender binary. Does everyone understand that? That's how it relates back to social reproduction theory. If they can disrupt the social reproduction of gender norms, which is what they're doing in the schools, then that creates a new social norm. And the social norm of a non-binary gender is the thing that they're going to use to abolish capitalism. Cool. Let me know if you guys have questions.
I think the appreciation of history and our agency in it can help us denaturalize really conservative gender norms, conservative orientation norms. We don't need to accept biology as fate because its meaning is socially produced. What it means to be gendered or to have an orientation is not necessarily a form of domination, but it is under conditions of capital. And social reproduction theory can trace out the histories and legacies why that's the case. So it also insists that we have some self-engendering powers. We can produce ourselves through our capacities for need satisfaction in ways that are different from social compulsion, different from social norms that are imposed on us from childhood. And I think those SRT can see that those capacities should not be rejected as unnatural or only capitalistically determined departures from an original healthy regime of gendering. I don't think such a thing even historically existed prior to capital. So I think social reproduction theory can, through denaturalizing, recognize capacities for self-engendering beyond, for orientation beyond extremely conservative gender norms, and show how those conservative norms are not functions of capital, but part of the fabric of social relations through which capital valorizes. Finally, next to finally, disability activists. What I've been describing has rested on our ability to see our powers can be determined in lots of different ways. We do not need to have our powers constrained by capital's demand to use them to valorize. And I think that has tremendous insight and value for disability activists, because once we see our powers, our living personalities are dominated by capital, what it means to be disabled, it is actually pretty easy, not entirely, but I think a large part of it can be seen as disability from the standpoint of what capital wants to do with our powers. We can organize the social relations in a way that makes what people can do a source for freedom rather than a source of constraint on the ability to satisfy their own or social needs. I think SRT motivates that set of social relations. Finally, from a feminist perspective, SRT is really deeply rooted in Marxist feminism, as Sarah has noted. Who reproduces our labor powers most directly is always been a gender determination. So women, and disproportionately women of color, have been the nurses, have been the school teachers, especially in impoverished areas. We need to center women and women's capacities for organizing labor power in different ways, really at the center of a social theory, in order to politically respond to the ways capital has been dominating, and of course in disproportionate and uneven ways. Finally, I think all of everything I've just said shows that the oppressed, through different relations of domination, are constrained to socially reproducing themselves, their communities, in ways that have to try to sidestep the dominant versions of compulsion that capital visits on us. And I think
he just said that people reproduce their own oppression. Did you guys hear that? And that's kind of outside of the family, right? That's not just about the family reproducing capitalism, although it is. It's saying that just, everyone who is oppressed in society, they continue to reproduce their forms of oppression. Do you guys know how yesterday, this was such a fucking gimme question for James Lindsay, and I'm quite frankly shocked he didn't answer it. Do you guys know how yesterday James was talking about how leftists want to raise class consciousness among the proletariat? And we went into the chat and we were like, okay, James, what is the purpose of raising class consciousness? That was such an easy question for James, but he refuses to answer it. Why does he refuse to answer it? Because it doesn't go along with the narrative that he's selling to people on behalf of Turning Point USA and Moms for Liberty. So what is the answer? Let's answer the question that James Lindsay should have answered yesterday and refused. What is the goal of elevating class consciousness among the proletariat? And what you just heard is the answer to that question. So that the people will fight to overthrow capitalism. What does that mean? Yup, but why? Relate it back to social reproduction theory for me. What did he just say? The goal is to disrupt capitalism. You raise class consciousness to disrupt capitalism. True, but why? He just said to end their oppression. What he just said, and we'll go back and we'll listen to it again. The people are responsible for reproducing their own oppression. That's what social reproduction theory means. The people are responsible for producing their own oppression. In the current system that we have, in the current capitalist system we have, the proletariat, through a variety of means, reproduces capitalism. And because the proletariat reproduces capitalism, the proletariat is literally reproducing the thing oppressing them. So when we're talking about raising class consciousness, when James was talking yesterday, their job is to raise class consciousness. The reason they want to raise class consciousness is because they want the proletariat, the people who are supposed to be oppressed, to become aware that they are reproducing their own oppression. Because the whole theory behind it is that right now, the proletariat is unaware that they are reproducing the thing that is literally oppressing them. Raising class consciousness, and this is what James Lindsay should have answered yesterday and didn't. Raising class consciousness is literally about teaching the proletariat, the oppressed people, you are reproducing your own oppression. And if you just stop reproducing your own oppression, if you just shift what you're doing a little bit, you will stop reproducing your own oppression. And that is how they're trying to disrupt the social reproduction of capitalism, by raising class consciousness to convince the proletariat that they need to save them from themselves. They need to save themselves from the reproduction of capitalism that they're doing. Does everyone understand that? The social reproduction in this case is social reproduction theory just means a social system will reproduce itself until it is disrupted. In this case, the social system is the proletariat are reproducing the system that keeps them oppressed. How you disrupt the social reproduction is to teach the proletariat that they are reproducing the system that's keeping them oppressed. And when you do that, you raise their class consciousness. That's what that means. And that was a question that James Lindsay could not answer. And this is basic 101 level stuff. Don't tell me James is ever an expert in this again. He does not understand it. If he did understand it, he could have explained it exactly like I just did. Now let's go back and listen to this again because you're going to hear him say it. You're going to hear him say the proletariat is literally reproducing their own oppression. The proletariat is complicit in reproducing their oppression because they do not know better.
Of course, in disproportionate and uneven ways. Finally, I think all of everything I've just said shows that the oppressed, through different relations of domination, are constrained to socially reproducing themselves, their communities, in ways that have to try to sidestep the dominant versions of compulsion that capital visits on us.
That's it.
And I think for that reason, oppressed people frequently make the very best organizers with the very best set of politics. And so I think that the capacities generated through having to have different communities of social reproduction, not beyond the scope of capital, but in a sense against it, really creates political opportunities and capacities that should be centered in political struggle going forward.
There it is. Do you guys hear that?
Yeah, and it should go with that.
If you can get the oppressed people to realize they're reproducing their own oppression, then the oppressed people become the very best organizers because they're like, guys, we're doing this to ourselves, and they start organizing against it, and that's how they use social reproduction theory to disrupt capitalism.
Without saying that, I don't mean to silo anti-racist, LGBTQIA activists, disability activists, and feminists. Like, we should be all of those things, and at the same time.
Oh. How do we do, Emily? Do we address those questions now?
Hang on. What did I tell you earlier? You're trying to debunk them. I promise you, debunking them is not going to work. Again, guys, and again, I know you're new, and so we're taking it light on you right now. I normally advise people in my chat to never debunk the Socialist, because if debunking them was all that was required, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now. They've been debunked ad nauseum for decades and decades and decades by people who are much smarter than us, by people who have much bigger bullhorns than us. If debunking them was all that was required, we wouldn't be here right now. And every ounce of energy that no, you're debunking. Don't argue. I know what this looks like. I've been doing this a long time. You are trying to debunk them. We see this all the time, Estate. We know what this looks like, okay? Every ounce of energy that you spend trying to debunk them is an ounce of energy that you will not spend learning to understand them. And this is going to go against every fiber of your being, but I promise you there are a lot of people in the chat who've been in exactly the position that you're in. They can see what you're doing too. I'm not trying to be mean to you. I'm not trying to talk down to you, but I know exactly what's happening. And this phase is like phase 1 of learning. You are going through the first phase of denial of learning the Socialist right now. I'm trying to help you. I really, really am. What you're doing is saying, there's evidence that capitalism provides a path to change. That doesn't matter. You will never convince them that capitalism is good. It will never happen. It doesn't matter what the evidence says. This is why I told you you need to detach from your perspective and put yourself in their shoes. I know you touched on transhumanism in the past, but until that is a reality, will they allow procreation? Yeah, they're not going to forbid people from procreating. Would only certain... No. That's not how it's going to work. That's not how it's going to work. No. I mean, listen, guys. Like, they don't... Like, polyamory is a thing for these people. Polyamory queers the nuclear family. You can still have kids within the confines of a polyamorous relationship and have it not be the nuclear family. A lot of abolish the family activists have kids. They're not going to disallow people from having kids. That's not what... We don't have any evidence of that. Hey, thanks, Drew. I appreciate the super sticker. Guys, if you would like to contribute to the Carlin might be going on a trip to have a little vacation in maybe about a month, maybe a little less than a month, maybe about a month, please feel free to send in a super chat to contribute to the Carlin Needs a Vacation Fund. And in return for that, I will be doing content during the maybe vacation that will maybe be happening.
Maybe I will try to answer the first. The second is explicitly for Aaron. And of course, Aaron, just feel free to do the same on this. Well, first of all, thanks, Aaron, because I think, yeah, I totally agree with what you said. The question of how do we understand social reproduction in value chains, especially from the feminist framework? Well, what I was thinking when I read this question is one specific type of value chains, which are migration, and especially female migration care chains, so-called care chains. And this is also because this is...
It depends on what type of vacation I'm going on, doesn't it?
I think social reproduction and definitely helps understanding these particular types of value chains because it helps us understand, it helps us move from a framework that was conceiving those chains mainly in terms of chains of emotional labor, according to some frameworks, or in fact, chains of labor without a wider understanding of how they are connected, in fact, to the reproduction and valorization of capital. And I think instead, social reproduction theory helps us to really link the migration of women, for instance, from the global south to the global north, but even simply from country to country in order to provide the care labor as deeply embedded and essential to the reproduction of labor power and to the valorization of capital. And actually, if you're interested, the person who asked this question, there is a growing literature on this. And I'm thinking of the work of Eleanor Kaufman, who is a geographer, social geographer, who has actually moved from the care framework to the social reproduction framework. And she's a big name in migration studies and in gender and migration particularly. And she explicitly says, we need social reproduction to understand these global movements of care labor. And so in that sense, this is just...
What does care labor mean? Pop quiz for the chat. What does care labor mean? I get there, true believers. I was born into a cult. I detangled myself when I was 36. I never try to convince my family members. Okay, but we just saw you do it in real time. And listen, like I keep trying to tell you, we're not trying to make you defensive, okay? What we're trying to let you know is that literally every single person who has been in your shoes, who has accessed this information, everyone goes through the same process, including me. All of us have gone through the same process. You are in the first stage right now, which is usually a denial stage. It's like, it really is like, it's like the 5 stages of grief. You're going to go through, if you stick with this content and you stick with me, you are going to go through the 5 stages of grief. Now, in the end, you're going to understand what's happening in the real world and you're going to be hinged into reality, but you will go through the 5 stages of grief. I've seen it over and over and over and over and over again. What you're doing is the denial stage. What you're doing is saying, but that won't work for reason X, Y, B, and Z, but this can't be happening because of reason X, Y, B, and Z. People have gone through this a million times before. They will go through it again. Not everyone makes it through it. This is why I'm explaining what's going on so that it helps you understand how you're framing this, because I've seen this happen. I've been doing this for over 3 years. Like, I know what process people go through when they first encounter this content. So hang in there. We're trying to help you. What does care labor mean? Care labor means childcare, raising kids. It also does mean taking care of the elderly. Exactly. And what they're saying is that women do a disproportionate amount of care labor that they should be paid for. Motherhood is considered to be care labor. Moms are the care labor. They do not acknowledge dads in this at all. They don't believe that dads actually participate. But it is, Bob brought up a good point. It is not just about kids. It is also about the elderly. That is another form of care labor. Yep, could include elder care or adult children with mental challenges. Yep, care, it just means health care, essentially. This is why they want universal health care. Care labor is unpaid home life stuff like child raising, elder care, menial health care roles. Exactly. No, they're not delusional. They have a completely different set of values. They have a completely different set of values. They're not delusional. They're not delusional. And it's easy, guys, please stop dismissing them as insane. They're not insane. Many of these people have been raised from the time they were children to have a completely different set of values. They are not insane. They see the world very differently, and their values have been reinforced in the environment that they're in. They're basically in a cult, but that does not mean that they're delusional. They wouldn't be winning if they were delusional. You've got to stop dismissing this as a mental health thing. It's not a mental health thing.
To address perhaps one portion of how, or one aspect of how social reproduction helps us understand the value chains.
I could add to that. I think that's theoretically, like, I think you're absolutely right. And I think social reproduction can and should be used to think through that. But just maybe a too personal anecdote, but my mother was working and she had to work when I was a child, which meant that after school, I did not have the ability to get to my practices or get home and take care of walk the dog or do all the things I needed to do sometimes to get to my after high school job. And so my mother hired people to come into the house and to help take care of me, especially my younger brother. And in the early to mid 90s, it's no accident that I was taken care of by Nada, Svetlana, and Vera, who were from the former Yugoslav Republic or the Soviet Union. That there's a direct connection between the labor power that was produced in me as somebody who would then go on to participate in the workforce, and chains of migration from Eastern Europe. And so that's it's not just a historical or theoretical, it's embodied in my labor power, in my living personality as well. I think that's important to recognize. So I think the next question says, should I read it aloud? Can other people already see? Okay. It's from Raisa Rua. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. It says, theoretical question for Aaron. Do you think in this connection between the logic of capital to history is something we need to do by, say, re-theorizing or expanding Marx's high level of abstraction in order to address not only value production, but the production of labor power itself? Or should we do it in other levels of abstraction and work in how do we connect those different levels? It's a really good question. So I think that it's really important to note that value production is an abstract way of understanding how capital itself functions. And we need to keep that question and the analysis of that question extremely clear and precise. We need to have a really precise understanding of how capital as a system of exploitation, as a system of pumping surplus value out of workers functions. And in addition to that, we need to be able to move down the levels of abstraction to look at how labor power itself is produced and reproduced. In doing so, we should not, I think, I'm on the side of the people who do not think that the production and reproduction of labor power is either necessarily value productive or necessarily not value productive. We need to see all the labor that goes into producing labor power in individuals, like I just told you was done with Svetlana and Vera and Nada for me, and see, are they waged? Are they waged in a way that produces the surplus value for a capital expanding firm? And if so, some socially reproductive labor does grow value. On the other hand, sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes it's the exact same set of activities. We can imagine a home healthcare aide working for a for-profit company, working and doing the exact same tasks at work in a way that creates value for capital, and coming home, doing the exact same tasks for an elderly relative. And that does not produce value for capital.
See?
So that distinction.
So what they're saying is, if you're doing the labor out into the world, that produces value for the capitalist system. But if you're just doing it privately in your home, that doesn't create any value for the capitalist system, and that's why you don't get paid for it. Does everyone understand?
Is, I think, important. We shouldn't be saying that socially reproductive labor, the labor that reproduces labor power itself, is necessarily analyzable via the question of value production. Value production needs to be preserved at a higher level of abstraction, as a theoretical question necessary for understanding capital as such. And then we can ask questions about how do we organize the production and reproduction of labor power? Is it for profit? Is it not? Is it waged? Is it not? Is it gendered in these ways? Is it evolving on all these different? And those are super important questions. But I like the way, Raisa, that you separated out the levels at which we're asking these questions.
I think the next question, Aaron, is clarification of the same question. I think you answered already.
Okay, how do we connect the different levels? I maybe I can speak for a couple seconds about how to connect those different levels, because I said it's super important to keep them distinct. I can't keep them so distinct that it looks like they're two incommensurate systems. You don't want value production on one hand and labor power production on the other. And one of the mediating links, as I said, is that some of our labor power production is in fact capitalistically arranged for profit. The other way to set it up is to try to show how, in different ways, production and reproduction of labor power creates what we bring to labor markets. The way that my labor power is produced conditions both the labor power I have and my access to labor power markets through which capital will ultimately valorize. Now, if I've produced as having certain kinds of labor power, but I don't have any access to the markets because of disability or because of racialization or because of any number of reasons, well, then we have a specific way, and it needs to be specified, the specific ways that the production of labor power, the reproduction of labor power, is tied to capitalist valorization. Some people are excluded. Some people are set at disadvantaged positions for accessing labor power markets. And we need to think through the different ways that that happens. And so that I've maintained that there's a distinction between those two things. Should never mean that they're so distinct that like the real lived experience of having one's labor power produced and reproduced is like a part. It's like it's a necessary condition for any sort of capitalist economy. So that's the way that I'm going to try to connect them. It's in the labor power that we have and then can bring to market. Yeah.
No, he's not really talking. I don't think he's talking about social credit. Did people disagree with me? Let me go back and listen again. What he's talking about is how the labor market is like unfairly oppressive, I think. But let me just listen again. I apologize.
Through which capital will ultimately valorize. Now, if I'm produced as having certain kinds of labor power, but I don't have any access to the markets because of disability or because of racialization or because of any number of reasons, well, then we have a specific way, and it needs to be specified. The specific ways that the production of labor power, the reproduction of labor power, is tied to capitalist valorization. Some people are excluded. Some people are set at disadvantaged positions for accessing labor power markets. And we need to think through the different ways that happens. And so that I've maintained that there's a distinction between those two things. Should never mean that they're so distinct that like the real lived experience of having one's labor power produced and reproduced is like a part. It's like it's a necessary condition for any sort of capitalist economy. So that's the way that I'm going to try to connect them. It's in the labor power that we have.
Guys, there isn't really like in what they're talking about the Marxist utopia developing into, they're not really talking about a social credit system. That's more the WEF stuff. So for people who are new, again, like the WEF stuff is separate from the radical revolutionary socialists. They're two completely separate groups. They do not overlap. They do not like each other. They do not work with each other. They both want like some sort of globalist order. But that doesn't mean they're working together. It just means they're going to fight at some point. So, like if you're thinking he's talking about social credit, that means you've probably been fed like the Maoist propaganda that conservatives like to shill, or like the WEF propaganda or stuff like that. I'm not saying the WEF stuff isn't a problem. I'm saying it's a completely separate problem from this. So that's not what they're talking about here. Yeah, the market unfairly dictates labor hierarchies based on pay. That's a pretty accurate accounting there.
And then can bring to market. Yeah. There's another question from Dan.
Yeah, socialists don't like Mao for the most part. There are Maoists that exist. I'm not going to say there's not a single socialist in the United States who doesn't like Mao, but for the most part, socialists in the United States are Leninists. Leninists do not like Stalinists because they believe Stalin ruined everything, and they believe that Mao comes in the tradition of Stalin. So they're not Stalinists, they're not Maoists, they are almost like the vast majority of current activists are Leninists.
You frame racial and gender oppression as belonging to capitalism's real history, in contrast to its structuring logic. That's true, I do. Does that make them contingent? So the question is race and gender oppression contingent? Could capitalism exist without race and gender? Okay.
Oh!
So I think we need to be really...
Could capitalism exist without race and gender? What an interesting question. Yeah, I mean, they don't really talk about Trotsky and they don't really talk about Che Guevara, to be honest. They don't really talk about them like ever. I do think AD that they would have excuse me. They would have preferred if Trotsky like succeeded Lenin instead of Stalin, but they don't really talk about Trotsky all that much. All right, let's listen to this question.
Contingent. Could capitalism exist without race and gender? Okay, so I think we need to be really clear when we're talking about capitalism, we cannot simply mean a logic. Capitalism in no instance can ever be a mere logic. The logic of capital is an ideal abstraction away from the actual concrete social relations of domination that make labor power and create it as having or lacking in different ways, accessing labor markets. And so when we ask about whether capital or capitalism can be, indifferent to or it's just the racial or gender domination is maybe contingent to cap, that's a question about the abstracted logic of capital. And at the level of abstraction, you've already abstracted away from race and gender. So you've got your answer to your question baked into the question. If, on the other hand, we understand capital not as the logic that we produce by abstracting away from social relations in order to see what's necessary from as exploitation at its root. If instead we actually look at social realities of capitalism, in every single instance, we see gender domination and racial domination.
Ding.
So I to call it
there
contingent.
There it is. He just said that capitalism creates gender domination and racial domination. Did everyone hear that? Everything relating to critical race theory comes from capitalism. Everything related to anti-racism, whiteness, etc., 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 it comes from capitalism. All the patriarchy stuff, everything related to gender comes from capitalism. He's saying there's no capital without race and gender. That's not what he just said, though. That's literally not what he just said. That's not what he just said. You got it twisted. Strike that. Reverse it. Capitalism came first. Capitalism created racism. Capitalism created gender. Strike that. Reverse it. We are not, and by the way, our goal is not to intercept these people. Our goal is to teach people who don't know what's going on. That is our only goal. Our goal is to teach people who know something crazy is going on in the world, who are not leftists, what is going on. Leftists are in a cult. Socialists are in a cult. You do not deprogram cult members. You teach everyone around the cult, here's what the cult is doing and here's what the cult thinks. Your job, everyone's job, is to learn as much as you can about the left, learn how to explain it in plain English, and then go out and teach your friends and family what is going on. I don't care what he asked. I care what he said. Does everyone understand this? Our only goal, what we are doing here, why we spend hours and hours and hours every week watching and dissecting the real far left, the goal of all of this is for everyone, you, me, every single person in the chat, learn as much as you can about the left. Learn what they believe, learn what they think, learn how they see the world. Learn how to explain what they are doing in plain, simple English. No academic ease. No flowery language. No taking 8,000 words to say something that you could explain in a sentence. We need to learn what they're doing. We need to learn how to explain it simply and easily and in plain English. And then it is your job to go out and teach as many people as possible. And the people that you start with are your friends and your family members and people who you have a personal relationship with, because that is who we learn from. We learn from people we have a personal relationship with. You can go out and teach other people too. I've trained other people how to do it, but you start with your friends and family members because that is where the personal relationship is. That is our job. That is our goal. That is all we are doing here. Learn as much as possible. Learn how to explain it in plain English. Go out and teach as many people as you can. That is what we're doing. We are not trying to deprogram people out of a cult because that is not possible. We cannot reach these people. We can't reach the people who've been indoctrinated into this cult since they were 5 years old. We can't reach them. They are never going to change their minds. This is why we don't debunk them at all. Because it doesn't matter. We can't reach them. Andre, thank you. Welcome back. Appreciate you, bro. Appreciate the super chat. Guys, I'm about halfway through my super chat goal right now. If you want to get me the whole way and allow me the flexibility to go on a vacation so I don't go insane, feel free to send in a super chat. I appreciate it. And thank you, AD. You know, I mean, AD, I really do appreciate you. I hope you understand that, right? You've been around a long time, but I hold you to a high standard because you're really smart, bro. You know this stuff in and out. You can explain it in academic. What we need to get you to, you need to start explaining it in plain English. Now, I know why you're explaining it in academic, because you're in school. So you're reading the academic language. We need to get you to a point where you can explain it in plain English. But I appreciate you. I know you're really smart. Can you translate what he said in plain English? So, yes. But we're working on that, okay? Okay, Estate. So guys, I am working on a book where I'm explaining all this stuff in plain English. Hopefully it'll be out before the end of the year. I'm really working very hard on it. I'm going to be publishing some more stuff from the book tonight. So I'm working on this. I don't have it perfectly yet, but what I would say in the meantime, Estate, you just got to keep coming back to the streams and you learn bit by bit. But you're not supposed to understand this when you first start listening to it. But you will learn it over time and we'll teach you. And the more you show up, the more questions you ask, the faster it's going to go. Hey, Estate, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for the tip. Let's add that to our tally. Guys, I am $34 away from achieving my goal. I would appreciate it. Oh, there we go. There we go. Alex, always in for the win, and now we are up over what? We are $30 from the goal. Excellent. Excellent. Appreciate you guys.
Would be absurd. So I think that constructing the necessity of racial and gendered dominating.
I just want to go back and listen to that again, actually. Sorry. Yo, Daniel! Daniel in with the $20 super sticker. Thank you, Daniel. I'm now $10 away from my goal. Now remember, guys, when we reach the goal, you can still send me money. I don't want anyone to feel like they can't send me money. I don't want anyone to feel like I would ever turn it down. I appreciate all of you. All right, let's listen to him say this again. And guys, listening to stuff over and over again is how we really develop a deep understanding of it. So it might seem tedious to listen to it over and over again, but this is how we develop an understanding of it that is far superior to anyone else on the internet.
That's true, I do. Does that make them contingent? So the question is
Yay!
Is race and gender oppression contingent? Could capitalism exist?
Hang on. Yay! For vacation fun! We met the goal! Goal! Thank you to everyone who contributed. I do appreciate it. Thank you, my darlings. Thank you for allowing me to do what I do. Thank you for allowing me to teach you socialism on the internet. Thank you for putting up with my bad attitude when I do have a tone. I appreciate all of you.
Exist without race and gender. Okay, so I think we need to be really clear when we're talking about capitalism, we cannot simply mean a logic. Capitalism in no instance can ever be a mere logic. The logic of capital is an ideal abstraction away from the actual concrete social relations of domination that make labor power and create it as having or lacking in different ways, accessing labor markets. And so when we ask about whether capital or capitalism can be, indifferent to or it's just the racial or gender domination is merely contingent to cap. That's a question about the abstracted logic of capital. And at the level of abstraction, you've already abstracted away from race and gender. So you've got your answer to your question baked into the question. If, on the other hand, we understand capital not as the...
So what he just said is when you abstract away from capital, you abstract away from race and gender because capitalism creates race and gender. And now we're going to get the second part.
Logic that we produce by abstracting away from social relations in order to see what's necessary as exploitation at its root. If instead we actually look at social realities of capitalism, in every single instance, we see gender domination and racial domination. So to call it contingent would be absurd. So I think that constructing the necessity of racial and gendered dominating relations as at the very root of capitalism becomes then a historical question rather than a logical question. And if we do the historical research, we see like that this is in fact how it emerged, and in fact how it exists in every instance across its elaboration. That we can imagine in some pristine ideal construction that it wouldn't have to just means we've abstracted away from what capitalism actually is. So that's my answer to Dan's question.
Can I add something to this before we move to the next question? Because Dan's question, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Because Dan's question, I think, is really, really important. And I have been struggling myself personally with this issue. We had a debate also a few years ago with Cinzia Ruzza and Johanna Oksala and Francesca Manning on these issues, which I thought it was really, for me, was really, really formative and really great to have this exchange with them around these issues. I don't think we solved the problem really, because it's such a big and complicated discussion. But I, just to follow a little bit on what Aaron was saying, I think one of the, two things. One is, I think there has been a certain tendency within Marxism, especially certain, how can we say, orthodox Marxism perhaps, and I'm thinking of the work of David Harvey, which is not necessarily orthodox Marxism, but, or Ellen Maxine Wood. These two authors come to my mind because they explicitly say, in a way, that gender and race are we cannot make sense of them from the historical from the logical. If we look at the logical and abstract perspective, we make sense of them just historically. But I think one of the issues that I have increasingly with them is that they keep talking about race and gender and class as systems. And we have this tendency also within Marxism in keeping this language of systems, which for me is very Parsonian, because I come from sociology, and is very functionalist. And I think that what Aaron does incredibly well in the book is really to talk about social relations of production, of domination and exploitation. I think this really, I think, helps us to go around to try to solve, at least theoretically, some of those issues about different systems and actually the ways in which they are, can I say, constantly and always interconnected, logically and historically and experientially, because they are social relations and not, in fact, systems in this kind of functionalist way. And the second thing, very, very quickly, is that to understand these issues, we need really to understand what is Marx's dialectical method to put together the logical and the historical. And here is where I personally have my own difficulties, because I find it incredibly difficult, incredibly complicated to think it through coherently. So I'm not really answering this question because, as I said, I have my own difficulties with this. But this is just to say, I think we have to go beyond some of the inherited categories, perhaps, and frameworks that we have from some Marxists. I will leave it there.
I think that's totally, we're not going to solve the question of the relation between real histories of relations and the logic of capital right now. But one maybe it's too easy for me to say, but one is, look, if you want to find, if what you mean by logic is an abstraction away from social relations, then of course you're not going to be able to get the social relations of domination that we describe with the categories of racism and gender oppression. You're not going to be able to get them up there because you've already baked into the question. You've already got that separation. So we either need to think the logic of capital as more social and less abstract, or create, and I haven't yet been compelled by any of the analyses, but there have been attempts to extract.
Hang on. Teresa, capitalism created race and gender. Guys, you guys have got to remember this. Capitalism always comes first. Capitalism is the core of every single problem. Capitalism is not the result of the problem. Capitalism is the creation of the problem. Capitalism created race when European men brought oppressed slaves to America. The European men were white, the oppressed slaves were black, the slaves were the private property of the European men, which is why capitalism created slavery, because it was about private property ownership. Thus, capitalism created systemic racism in the United States. Systemic racism means the system that upholds racism. The system that upholds racism is capitalism. Capitalism created the patriarchy. It created the gender binary. It created all gender oppression because it put men in the workplace and women in the home. Capitalism created the problem. Capitalism created white and black. Before capitalism, you were African, Chinese, English, Indian, Irish, French, German, whatever. There were no, and this is what these people believe, it's not what I believe, there were no quote-unquote white people before capitalism. They believed that slavery in America literally created white people because prior to slavery in America, they were known as English, Irish, French, whatever.
Logic from social relations. Viewpoint has had, Viewpoint magazine has attempted in a theoretically rich way to attempt a logic of some relations of domination. The problem with that is that the social relations of domination, as Marx teaches us, historically change and are subject to revision through resistance and through our uprisings and through our reconstructions and through the labor powers and capacities we have to be and do otherwise. And so I'm also skeptical of trying to extract a stable logic from social relations.
Well, no, Alex, you're not wrong. Alex, what you said isn't wrong. What you said is correct. Capitalism created white and black. That is absolutely correct. Before capitalism, you were known by your ethnicity. That is absolutely correct. Post-capitalism, which means post-private property ownership, it's a specific reference to slavery, you were known as, well, maybe not yellow. Maybe not that. But no, you're not wrong about that. That was actually a mostly correct statement.
Let's see. Debates about the pandemic have highlighted how much ableism there is around. From this viewpoint, I think your attempt to clarify the normative stakes of SRT is extremely important. Well, thank you, the Cincietta 15. A nice handle. I think that it's really important. We should remember that in the critique of the Gotha voting program, Marx ridicules the idea of from each according to their ability to each according to need until we've revolutionized social relations. We can't simply give back to people the abilities that the produce or the surplus or the value that they contribute through their abilities. That would be a disaster. And Marx responds to that political position with vitriol. And I think that has tremendous implications for disability theory. We cannot say to each according to their ability if capital and other relations of domination disable us, literally, and also in all kinds of different.
He just said that capitalism literally causes disability. Do you guys see how capitalism to these people is the core root cause of every problem? Do you guys hear that? Capitalism literally causes disability.
With vitriol. And I think that has tremendous implications for disability theory. We cannot say to each according to their ability if capital and other relations of domination disable us, literally, and also in all kinds of different ways through access to labor markets, psychologically. So there's tons of different ways that this insight can be developed for disability activists. And I think it's a rich minefield that requires, a rich mine that requires more unpacking. I don't claim to have figured out Marxism or I figured out social reproduction theory for disability activists. I think I've just pointed to some resources in my book. Can you say something more about this in relation to the pandemic? Oh, would you like to begin, Sarah? I feel like I've been speaking a lot.
Yeah, I think that was still linked to the previous question on ableism, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so
maybe the next question, how would you relate social reproduction in today's 0 hours work arrangements? Oh, okay. Well, I guess one of the things that we see now is that some of the jobs that are in fact organized with 0 hours contracts in the UK, for example, are jobs directly that are social reproductive jobs and professions. And here I'm thinking of people, for instance, in the who work in restaurants or in the food industries, or even people in some of the care jobs. I know, for example, I know also from research I did here in London that people working, some women working as elderly carers, particularly those working for agencies, for recruitment agencies, were in fact hired with 0 hours contract, or cleaners, especially cleaners who are, who work through agencies, and so who actually have contracts, because, as you know, lots of cleaners don't even have contracts, because those who work in private households very often have totally unregulated arrangements. But those who tend to work in more formalized ways, they often have 0 hours contracts. So this is an immediate answer that comes to my mind, the ways in which this actually connects to social reproduction. And maybe another way in which we can understand the casualization of labor and this phenomenon of 0 hours contract through social reproduction is also through the lenses of the so-called feminization of labor. There has been lots of talk in the last 20 years at least about how labor is increasingly feminized, but this doesn't simply mean, it doesn't even mainly mean that more women work, which is true, but this is not actually the point of the theory of the feminization of labor. What it means more deeply is that the precarious and casualized conditions of work that have been historically reserved for women, or for people identifying as women, as feminized subjects, are now extended to the workforce in general. So I think this is actually an interesting way in which we can connect social reproduction, which also talks about the feminization of labor and the specific oppressions of women as laborers, and contemporary work arrangements such as 0 hours contracts, for example.
And I think we can add dimensions of racialization and understanding immigrant oppression and access to labor markets through a similar lens. And I think it's a really good question about 0 hour work arrangements. That's the limit of the contract arrangement. But low level, very low hours, or in the U.S. hours that are just below the threshold at which they need to offer healthcare. Like we can see all different kinds of people getting shunted into, not all different, specific groupings getting shunted, the segmentation of the labor market getting shunted into different kinds of contracts.
There is a question from Brazil, Aaron.
Okay. Where is it? Oh, our social reproduction study group here in Brazil would like to hear more from you about your thoughts on the way Hill Collins conceptualizes the matrix of domination and the way SRT addresses them. Okay. So in my chapter on intersectionality, I tried to reconstruct what I thought was the strongest possible case for intersectionality. And to my mind, that really draws on Patricia Hill Collins. I think she's a great theorist, and she does not forget about class. She does not claim that oppressions are merely siloed into brief moments of intersection. She's actually a very rich theorist, and it's somebody that I think can be helpful for radicals. The problem, I think, or the way that I think social reproduction theory can integrate Patricia Hill Collins' insight and do a bit better, is by paying attention to the historical forces that have created disadvantaged labor powers in different ways.
Yeah, I think this is a really good point. People in my chat and that have been in my community for a while do more to educate other people than James Lindsay does. That's just reality. This is why James Lindsay started attacking my audience. He just started doing this months ago. He told everyone in his audience to block my audience. It wasn't just me, it was my audience. Because my audience are people in my audience who've been watching socialism with me for years. They're significantly better teachers of it than James Lindsay. And that's the point. Because we need to teach as many people as possible.
So rather than seeing different aspects of somebody's oppression, we can look at the histories that have caused these kinds of oppressions to combine in different ways. And with that kind of historical analysis of the reproduction and direction of matrices of domination, we have a better political insight. That is, we can understand through the historical direction and reproduction what needs to be changed, what needs to be responded to. And so the way that I've been trying to think about it recently is that we can, social reproduction theory can include an intersectional moment in its understanding of class. When I say that class needs to be understood from the standpoint of social relations, what I mean is we can't just say it's working class. We need to understand the working class as queer, as immigrant, as people of color.
I, of course, am right, but did you hear what he just said? We need to understand the working class as queer, as immigrant, as people of color, because what he's saying is all oppressed people are part of the working class. This might be a stupid question, but did the word whiteness come from the back in the day? In old days, only white people could own. So the word whiteness comes from because the owners of the private property in slavery were white. The private property was black. And the reason they say that white people were created is because the slave owners, the private property owners, needed to distinguish themselves from the private property. So that's why, because it was like white and black in that case is a reference to skin color, but the only reason that whiteness was created was because the white people were the bourgeois private property owners, the black people were the oppressed workers, the owned private property. And so the references to skin color today, because according to the left, we live in a post-racial society. We became a post-racial society when Barack Obama got elected president, black man getting elected to the highest office in the land. You can no longer argue that people are oppressed on the basis of their skin color if a black man literally gets elected to the highest office in the land. So today, and this changed when Barack Obama got elected president, references to whiteness are not a reference to skin color. It is a reference to the system that created whiteness in the first place, which is capitalism. Yeah, okay, fine, but we're not talking about that right now, Verl. We're not talking about that right now, okay? We can only take it one step at a time, okay?
Relations. What I mean is, we can't just say it's working class. We need to understand the working class as queer, as immigrant, as people of color, as more specified than just people of color, but perhaps black or Latin, and then go through the whole different thing. We can't deny the reality of the working class if we're going to build a working class politics. And I think rather than reinvent the wheel, we can rely on the way intersectionality and black authors in particular have helped us see that already. In that way, I can insist that it's important to center class without being a problematic, reductive Marxist, because what I mean by class is the social reality of intersecting oppressions. What I mean by the social experience of class, the lived social reality of class, includes what Patricia Hill Collins is describing as a matrix of domination. I then explain how class, given those realities, contributes to a logic of exploitation, a logic of capital valorization that we need to really overcome if we're going to have any chance at undoing any of the systemic social, any of the ongoing social relations of domination. So I think some versions of social reproduction theory have really just like been anti-intersectionality. And some, I think it's needlessly ungenerous. Okay.
Why not?
So one of the things that I really appreciated in your work, Sarah, is a kind of principled internationalism that refuses to accept.
Yeah, so they are, but I really don't want to get it deep into intersectionality today, Sandy, if I'm honest. But yeah, that's what they're talking about.
Any privileging or any advantaging of some segments of the working class, let's say women from an advanced Western capitalist country, at the cost of others, at the cost of sidelining others or shunting them into more like dangerous working conditions or undervalued working conditions, as if doing so was a condition for their own freedom. So I'm wondering if you can say more about the...
Maybe we need to do a good old-fashioned whiteness training tomorrow for happy hour. We haven't done a whiteness training in like a long ass time because I don't really do DEI training anymore because I find DEI honestly to be too elementary. But I've been getting a lot of these questions about the race stuff lately, and maybe we just need to suck it up and do a good old-fashioned whiteness training, and they'll explain all of this to you guys. And I probably need to go back and get clips from the whiteness trainings I did back in the day anyway, because the reason I know all this stuff is like I've heard them explain it like 8,000 times from Sunday. Maybe we just need to suck it up and do that. Ugh. Yeah, we have got some new people. Welcome, new people. We appreciate you. Welcome to our dystopian, chaotic world.
The kind of international, like the solidarizing and internationalist approach that I... Do I sense that appropriately in your work? And can you say more about that?
Yeah, I'm thinking... Well, I guess your comment, I take it to refer...
Let me take you back to the beginning of 2021, when I was still learning all this stuff, before socialism ruined me, before socialism drove me insane. At the beginning of 2021, I streamed DEI training, which I thought was really bad at the time. I had no idea where it was going to take me. And back at the beginning of 2021, when I was streaming DEI training, we almost exclusively watch whiteness training, which is your typical anti-racism training, which is, again, it's just like teaching all the stuff it's like basically teaching the 1619 Project. It's basically this is like the all white people are racist one, but it's really not about white people. And how I figured out that whiteness means capitalism is we used to watch all these DEI trainings, and in all of these DEI trainings, they would say capitalism over and over and over again. And I kept going like, why the fuck are they talking about capitalism? Why are they talking about capitalism? But it was uncanny. In every, like, I thought we were doing race. This was back when I kind of thought that this was still about like white skin color. And they would just do these whiteness trainings and it wouldn't actually be about skin color at all. It would be about capitalism, like over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it was uncanny. In every single whiteness training we did, there was at least one, if not several, mentions of capitalism. And so that was how I figured out that whiteness actually meant capitalism, because I kept hearing it in their DEI training over and over. Reagan remembers this. It was like, and we remember when we were like, oh, capitalism! It got the mention. And we were like, there it is. Every time. Where do they see themselves? What do you mean? Can you give me some more information?
especially to, if I think of the book that I published recently, 3 years ago, for example, there is especially one.
How they see themselves. Hang on. Well, the solution is abolishing capitalism. That is what they're trying to do. So they see, like, they are all in the struggle to abolish capitalism. They are in the glorious revolution against capitalism. They are doing the work to abolish capitalism. Yeah, well, it's actually not crazy at all because they don't. You just made that shit up. They don't. This is not a channel where I'm going to say it's the Jews, because it's not. It's literally not. It's literally not. It may have been listen, we have to acknowledge the Frankfurt School was mostly Jewish, almost entirely Jewish. Fine, but it's been a long fucking time since the Frankfurt School came to the United States. It's been almost 100 years since the Frankfurt School came to the United States. And what exists now is a completely mutated strain of Marxism, and they're not all Jewish, bro. So don't come in my chat and try to plant that shit. They are not all Jewish. Hinge yourself back into reality. Thank you for being a member of the channel for 8 months. Whiteness training is always a welcome diversion and review. I fully support. No size, Carlin. You can do it. Yeah. Okay. I apologize. I yelled at you a little aggressively there. If you just learned about it, I yelled at you a little aggressively, Jason, and I apologize. Okay. I'm just really used to people coming into my chat doing it's the Jews thing, and I fundamentally reject that. Like, it is a much bigger problem. It really is. And listen, again, I'm not going to be one of those people who denies the roots of all of this. I'm really not. Like I said, the Frankfurt School was almost entirely Jewish. Lenin was Jewish. Marx was Jewish. The Bolshevik leadership was mostly Jewish. Like, that's, and this is just reality. I am not saying that all Jews are Marxists. I am not saying that at all. I am saying that the people that started all this bullshit were almost entirely fucking Jewish, and that is just a statement of fact. I'm not assigning a value to that fact. I am just saying as a statement of fucking fact, they were almost all Jewish. However, that does not mean that socialist activists today are all Jewish, because they're just not. And that's just like, that is just a fact. That is just reality, and we need to grapple with that, because a lot of people think, and I have people come into my chat, Carlin, if we fix the JQ stuff, then all this stuff is going to go away. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not, because it has mutated into its own separate thing. Well, yeah, but you also have to remember, like, I mean, Sarah Ferris she's not Jewish. So it's kind of like, do you see Jews show up? Yeah, of course you do. Yeah, 100%. But are they all Jewish? Most of them are not. Let's see. Maria, thank you for being a member of the channel, Maria. Almost right away, I learned things I was doing that made things worse, gave them fodder. Just getting people to stop accidentally helping helps. I mean, that's part of the point. That's part of the point of learning what they're actually doing. Because right now, like, the conservative disinformation wagon on these people, it actually helps them. That's part of why we're going after James Lindsay so hard. Because James Lindsay's disinformation helps these people. James Lindsay's disinformation runs cover for these people. These people win because conservatives don't know what the fuck is going on. Anyway.
Section, which, in a way, I think it needs to be developed further, but is one of the sections that I enjoyed the most writing, but that also was very challenging, which is precisely to understand the relationship between feminists in the global north and in the global south, but also female workers, particularly feminized workers in these different contexts. And one of the things that I try to say is how by privileging a certain model of emancipation, which is the one that was in a way, pursued in the global north. Some feminists, including left-wing feminists, and including also Marxist feminists, have taken this to be a kind of a telos, a kind of a telos of emancipation, as if it was dictating the path to emancipation also to other women. And what instead I think we need increasingly to learn from other feminists, including, for instance, Muslim feminists, but I would say this speaks more generally about other struggles, is that we really need to understand those deeply, and we need also to accept that our path to emancipation is not necessarily the one to be imposed, or necessarily the truthful one or the right one. And it is really within struggles and through solidarity, and I think is also what you're referring to, through international solidarity and international solidarity, that we can work out those different, also possibly and probably paths to emancipation.
Yeah, I really like those sections in your work, because I also have a vision of socialism as a set of free social relations. And what freedom will look like depends on the systems of, I keep saying systems, and the social relations of oppression that have been dominating for us, given our local histories and geographies. So we need to, and I really enjoyed that approach in your work. And I think you're absolutely right that gets negotiated out through struggle. That gets negotiated out through having
revolution,
like real bonds and contacts of solidarity and mutual support between different conceptions of what pursuing socialism looks like. It's not a philosophical or theoretical or conceptual problem. It's a real political one.
There is a question.
Would you please explain Rawls's theory of justice in social reproduction and its impact in today's labor market? Sure. I actually think that Rawls provides a really nice contrast to social reproduction theory and how we try to go about envisioning things.
Okay, what's this?
In Rawls, as many of you will know, the ideal theory of justice stems from adopting a position of pretend ignorance. We have to put on the veil of ignorance and imagine what kind of social relations we could agree to if we didn't know anything about ourselves. If we didn't know that we were raced or gendered or had a certain kind of immigration status in the way that we do. Rawls wants to unpack a logic through which we could just come to agree that there are certain sets of kinds of inequalities that we would be okay with, or there's certain kinds of domination we would radically reject. And in that way, by abstracting away from lived experiences, by pretending that we're ignorant behind a veil where we can't see real material realities, he tries to develop a theory of what justice would look like. A theory of justice evolved directly from consciousness or through an idea that has no contact with what we're calling social relations of domination. I think social reproduction theory is a better way of going about doing things. I think if we want to imagine what a good world would look like, we can't pretend to be ignorant of the harms that are actually experienced in disproportionate ways by different people. We got to be deeply aware and concerned about that and center those voices in our political response, not abstract away from them. We need to do a good job of listening to what people who are suffering from dominant social relations say their freedom would be. I'm aware that extreme restrictions on access to both state recognition and healthcare exists in the UK for trans people. And that has been advocated from the standpoint of like doing what's appropriate and liberatory. If you ask trans people, no. Or the vast majority of trans people, no. So I think that the Rawlsian approach, although it's not something I discuss directly in the book, it is actually a fine contrast to highlight what I think is valuable about social reproduction theory.
And I think, I mean, as there are no questions, maybe just to add a little bit to what Aaron just said, I I don't know Rawls' theory of justice very well. Aaron certainly knows it much better than me, and I don't come from philosophy. But the way I understand it, I completely agree that social reproduction theory provides a much better understanding of certain injustice, including racial injustice and gender injustice more directly in the case of social reproduction theory, precisely because it doesn't abstract from those very real and very concrete social relations of oppression and exploitation. And to me, Rawls' theory of justice and the veil metaphor was always really interesting, because in a way this is precisely how bourgeois theories of justice operate. They operate through a veil, through an abstraction of, in a way, ungendered, unracial, and equal individuals, which is precisely an abstraction, as Marx teaches us already from the Jewish question, and from really the early writings and so on, really the abstractions of the state. So in a way, I think one nice contrast to me to Rawls' theory has always been to read Du Bois. If you read Du Bois, one of the things that is really incredibly touching and fascinating about his work is precisely what he describes the experience, his first encounter with racism as a little child who suddenly is treated badly by a little girl. He must have been 6 or 7 years old. And for the first time, he is made consciously aware of the color of his skin, and of the fact that the reason why this little girl doesn't treat him nicely is because of the color of his skin. And he says this was precisely like tearing down the veil, like this is exactly the same metaphor that he uses, but in the opposite way, precisely by saying, if you really want to confront racism or exploitation, etc., you need to tear down this veil. You cannot operate with that. Yeah, I don't know how much, maybe people have already written about this, I have really no idea. But I always thought it was an interesting contrast, and I've used it sometimes also with my students, so I just wanted to repeat this here.
I like the metaphor of tearing down a veil, and I think that that's super valuable for seeing through some racist realities. And I think in the U.S. context, maybe even broader, a lot of veils have been torn down in the last few weeks. A lot of people are beginning to see themselves as white and as understanding some of the dominance that has been built into their previously unreflected and veiled understanding as well.
A lot of people are starting to see themselves as white. Remember, this was back in 2020, guys. This was right around the time that the George Floyd uprising, or the George Floyd rebellion, as they call it, was happening. And so they're saying a lot of people started seeing themselves as white. Well, if it was about skin color, why would they do that? What he's saying is a lot of people started seeing themselves as oppressors. That's what he meant.
White. People are having a critical interrogation of their whiteness in a way that I don't think had been the case, maybe even since the late 60s. And that has been extremely exciting. That has been an extremely valuable political development. And I think that that we have the.
They're not talking about the government as you currently understand it. The government as you currently understand it, they consider to be the capitalist U.S. government. They want to abolish the government as you currently understand it. They want to abolish the Constitution. They want to reconstitute something that they do not consider to be the government. These people literally say smash the state. When they say smash the state, they don't mean any hierarchical model. They mean specifically the capitalist U.S. government. So they don't expect the government to set them free. They believe that the system that they are going to build to replace the capitalist U.S. government is what's going to set them free. And that system is going to be free from capitalism.
The Black-led uprisings to thank for that. Oh, okay. I would like to say just a few things about the pandemic, because I hope I'm not right, but I'm deeply, darkly pessimistic about reopening, as many economies seem to be committed to doing. And it seems so wrong. We've just seen what it takes to have a modest reduction in infectious rates. And so now that we've done that and seen what's successful.
Bro, this is not about your opinion. Our job here is to learn what they think. This is not about your opinion. This is not about debunking them. If you are not here to learn what they think, then get the fuck out.
We're going to move in a different direction. It seems frankly absurd to me, and I'm deeply worried about that. Now, from a social reproduction standpoint, I think that since Mike Davis and Kwamen spoke on spillover, we've known that capitalism is engaging in relations of production that, due to demands for efficiency and maximum extraction of surplus labor value, creates all kinds of hazardous conditions for workers, and for viruses to spread from one animal population to another to the workers, and then through extremely condensed and vastly traversed supply chains. So from a social reproduction perspective, we can see just how and why this virus has spread, and how and why it's likely to not be something that's one and done with COVID-19 until we fundamentally change the way that we produce. And that's one lens, I think. So one aspect of the social reality.
Bye, Dragon Ball. See you tomorrow.
We're living through that social reproduction can understand that, the genesis of the conditions for COVID-19. The other is this, for some people, head-scratching reality that poorer and blacker and more Latin, more racialized populations, and in particular indigenous populations, are suffering from COVID-19 more than anybody else. And social reproduction theory has the ability to show how and why that shouldn't be head-scratching. Like, we should be able to see how disadvantaged segments of the working class are housed in.
So they believe that capitalism literally created the pandemic because businesses refused to shut down. And if businesses had put people ahead of profit, they would have just shut down.
Have access to less space in their housing, have the requirement to go to work because they're labeled essential, otherwise don't have avenues for social reproduction beyond the waged relation, are deeply dependent on those who do, and so can't socially isolate. So, all different kinds of reasons we can.
They believe these ideas because they're in a cult and their thought process has never been disrupted in a significant way. A lot of people who believe these ideas have been a lot of people who believe these ideas are raised as second or third generation socialists. A lot of them had socialist parents. A lot of them had socialist grandparents. A lot of the people who believe these ideas now, what we're dealing with in the world today now is that kids are being taught these ideas from the time they're 5 years old. We have an entire generation of kids who were taught these ideas in school from the time they're 5 years old. They don't know anything differently. They literally don't know anything differently. If you have only been taught to think in a certain way, and you've never been presented with an alternative to that way of thinking, you don't know that alternative exists. If you only exist in an echo chamber where you are only hearing from people who agree with this ideology, you don't know that other perspectives exist. When the echo chamber forces everyone out and demonizes everyone by calling them racist, white supremacists, Nazis, I know you're an actual Nazi, but we're not talking about that right now. When the echo chamber demonizes everyone who comes in and is trying to be like, have you guys thought about this? They're called all the worst names in the book. Then the people in the echo chamber are not going to listen to those people. It's a cult. We are dealing with a massive cult that has been perpetuated via the K through 12 public schools. And when you're never presented with a different idea, you literally don't know that idea exists.
Knowledge from social reproduction theory, the racialization, the racial aspects of COVID-19. It is magnifying already terribly violent social relations.
Oh, there is a question.
Joshua Panetta. I was wondering if you can specify the contraposition you're drawing between SRT and abstract theory. There are many strands of theory that attempt to rectify theoretical abstraction. Oh yeah, social reproduction theory is not the only theory that's going to try to rectify
It's
abstract
Plato's
theory.
cave, literally.
No, I think
This is a great analogy. Socialists are in Plato's cave. The only thing the socialists have ever known are the shadows on the wall. They don't know that people exist outside the cave. They don't know that a world outside the cave exists. Except in this analogy, the people who are inside the fucking cave are in charge of the world, or at least the United States. The people who are inside the cave are educating all the children based on the shadows that they're seeing reflected on the wall in the cave. They're not educating the children based on the real world. They're keeping the children in the cave and saying, look, this is how the world works. They are not delusional. They are not delusional. Stop saying they're delusional. Every time you say they're delusional or have some form of mental illness, they win. They're not delusional. They have not been given access to the full breadth of information. But stop saying they're delusional. They're not.
that social reproduction theory is one among others that attempts to draw abstract theory down into reality. What I particularly like about social reproduction theory's attempt to ground abstract theory is that it grounds it in the way we reproduce ourselves, our needs, our capacities, our labor powers, and the social relations through which all of that's possible. It provides an ongoing, it's not just a snapshot that ties abstract theory to a reality. It's a motion picture that shows the genesis and the continued likely development. And so that historical element that built into the idea of reproduction, I think, is one of the reasons social reproduction theory is best suited to respond to the recognition that abstract theory is insufficient. Closing statement.
Well, I was wondering if Emily, maybe shall we ask people to ask their final questions before we do a closing statement?
We're almost done anyway,
maybe?
Tate. Thank you for dropping by. We appreciate you. Come back again.
So if anyone wants to ask something, they can.
There's only
now.
10 more minutes of this, guys. We're almost there.
No.
Looks like they might actually be done. That'd be nice. 10 minutes early.
Yeah, maybe.
No.
One thing I also want to say something
Woman
about
has
the
to ruin
pandemic and social reproduction.
No, I don't want to.
Maybe I will.
I don't want to. I don't want to. We're done. I don't want to listen to Italian woman pontificate anymore. We're done. That's 3 hours of socialism. That's enough. We got through all the worst parts of it. So, guys, that is all we have for today. I do appreciate everyone. I will be back tomorrow with another stream. And as a reminder, if you do want to support the work I'm doing, the very best way to do so is to head over to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. There it is on the screen right there. And as a reminder, I am 100% funded by people like you. I cannot do this without your help. I cannot do this without your support. You allow me to remain completely politically independent. Now, I might be an anti-communist. Hey, thank you for the membership, Drew. I do appreciate it. I might be an anti-communist, but I do actually have a pretty wide gamut of people who watch my channel. I have everything from dissident right-wingers all the way to actual communists. Actual communists do watch my channel. Why do communists watch my channel? Because I know their ideology better than they do. And I have everyone in between. I have conservatives, I have MAGA voters, I have independents, I have libertarians, I have disaffected lefties, I even have some Democrats, I even have some progressives. I have the entire spectrum of political belief. And so the reason that I'm able to do that is because I am not politically motivated in what I am doing, beyond the fact that I don't want the fucking commies to win. And I don't think you want the commies to win, because they're going to screw up everything. And if we can agree on that, I don't care if you're a Democrat. As a reminder, guys, Democrats are not socialists. Disaffected lefties are not socialists. Progressives are not socialists. A lot of Democrats and a lot of progressives, they don't know how far things have gone. They legitimately just don't know. So we need to treat them kindly. We cannot be demonizing them, okay? I am not working for the Republican Party. I'm not even voting for Donald Trump. I hate pretty much everyone equally. And so I'm pretty sure I'm actually the only completely depoliticized person that's talking about this stuff on the internet today, which means that you're just getting the receipts. You're not getting a political narrative. I'm not showing you something to prove a certain point. We literally just watch socialist training. We watch the ones that I think are going to be the best for teaching. If you have stuff you want me to watch, send it to me. Send it to me in a DM. We'll take a look at it. Stuff like that. But I do not have a political agenda. And the reason I can do this without having a political agenda is because I'm 100% funded by people like you who literally just want the truth. If you don't want to subscribe to my Substack, or maybe even if you do and you're like, Carlin, how can I give you more money? I'm going to be like, I'm really glad you asked how you can give me more money. You can head over to the Unwoke Art Store. The Unwoke Art Store is my merchandise store for my money. It is the best merchandise store on the internet. It is certainly the best anti-communist merchandise store. You can find my Marxism is Evil yard signs. You can find the special limited edition Halloween collection. We've got them on t-shirts, sweatshirts. We got pint glasses. We got mugs. We've got stickers. We have hats now. Alex, I saw your order come through. I'm going to show you the hat that Alex just ordered. I don't have a promo for it yet, but if you go to full catalog and then you go to the newest items in the store, check this out. We've got our Marxism is Evil hat. It comes with red lettering or white lettering, and this is a little bit of a lower profile hat. This is like a dad hat, and then if you want the snapback, you can get the snapback in all black, or you can get it in black with a red brim. Again, that is that the text is either in white or in red. Take your pick, but they look so cool, don't they? I also have it on hoodies. I have it on t-shirts. I'm gonna do a little promo about that, and I have some the yard sign stuff on some stickers, on a bag, on posters, on things like that. Because people were like, Carlin, I don't have a yard. Well, I'm like, I can hook you up with some stuff. So I did. So that is all in the Unwoke Art Store right now. I have a full, amazing catalog of stuff on the site. You can find all sorts of cool stuff on there. And of course, all purchases do go to support the work I'm doing. And of course, you know, guys, Christmas is coming. It's going to be here before we know it. It's going to be here before we know it. And I know some people that might like some Christmas gifts. When I make my current account private, I will post some pics of my merch. Yeah, that would be amazing, actually, Maria. Guys, remember, if you buy merch from my store, take a picture of it, send it to me. I would really, 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 really love to see it. All right, guys, that is all we have for today. Thank you for hanging out with me. I will be back at 5 p.m. tomorrow for happy hour, where we will drink beer and we will watch some sort of training of some sort. I appreciate all of you guys. And hey, guess what? I've got an outro video now. I have a whole new outro video now. So, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one. Take care. We'll see you soon.
How are you feeling?
Well,
How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.